but who protects the vulnerable? Lachasa says all churches should be regulated, especially new fashion churches. Icon says...
The big M, he says yes, and it's about time, because these are the last days the Bible told us about. Says Michael Sitole.
Makalat says not the belief, but the church itself. Before a church is open, government must appoint a panel to assess if the people are legitimate or not.
This one from Chipo G, he says, why regular church? As if the problem is affecting the whole church. Only few rotten potatoes are causing it. Yes, but they're causing a lot of people grave danger and many, many concerns.
Now, these are some of your comments coming through. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. Government officials are visiting two schools, Maslenga Secondary and Rufano Primary in Bronkhorstspruit this morning. The police ministry says the former Hawks boss Benning and Tlameza's reporting for work today is merely an operational matter. And Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are set to face each other in the May 7th runoff to become the French president. Those are your headlines. Before we get there to the news, let's find out from Kendall what's happening on the sports field. That it was a very busy weekend, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It was a humding of a weekend. It had a little bit of something for everybody. Yeah. And I think everybody had something to celebrate, unless you've got really rotten luck and all your teams lost. So it remains to be seen. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
They're away together. Another great start by Akani Simbine. Wait, Fanikak's left behind. Thunder Roto's running well. It's Simbine and Roto at the moment. Here comes Fanikak. It's Akani Simbine taking it.
Sprint Kings Akani Simbine and Wait Fanikak hold true to the hype as the crowds fill up Potch to witness South Africa's finest in action.
Fanikak going. Simbine chasing. Newtlela. Wait, Fanikak 19.90 seconds.
The Pirates looking to create an opportunity of their own. It was Ngosi who found Rahale, and indeed, is that the winner by Gabuza?
As SuperSport United dump Kaizer Chiefs out of the Nedbank Cup, Orlando Pirates secure their passage to the semi-finals with a 2-1 victory over Bloem Celtic. And in La Liga, Lionel Messi puts Real Madrid to the sword with his 500th goal for Barcelona, blowing the league title race wide open.
Lionel Messi!
Oh my goodness!
Lionel Messi does it again, he's superhuman! Oh, Lionel Messi has just exploded La Liga into life. Another chapter in the incredible story of this little man.
Manchester United show depth of character as they continue their fight for a top four finish with a controlled 2-0 victory over Burnley.
Wayne Rooney for Manchester United.
All this and more we'll be bringing to you later on at 10:40. Do stay with us because Elvis has got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. Government officials are visiting two schools, Maslenga Secondary and Rufano Primary in Bronkhorstspruit this morning. 18 learners, 4 from Maslenga Secondary and 14 from Rufano Primary, as well as 2 adults, lost their lives when a minibus taxi collided with a truck on Friday. Only one body has been identified thus far.
A heartbroken mother and father, having lost 2 children, Siyabonga and Tembelane Maziba, were in grade 1 and 6 respectively. The family grateful for the support it's receiving.
I appreciate what the government is doing for me since I don't have anything.
Other grief-stricken parents were comforted by government officials. 14 pupils were from Rufano Primary and 4 from Mhlengi Secondary School. The families are kept abreast of developments and plans. Funeral arrangements will be made once DNA tests are finalized in 5 days. Injured pupils will also be supported.
Provide support to families, both families of the deceased and those that are injured. We've put counsellors to ensure that there is support. We've also placed counsellors to come to school.
Cold comfort to families. The road is also receiving attention.
The issue of the road is in the pipeline of the Mpumalanga government, which is going to start constructing that particular route by the beginning of November 2018. but the provincial government is taking care of the Papa route.
Fellow school pupils will receive counseling from Monday.
Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says allegations of state capture must be put to rest to safeguard the unity and cohesion of the African National Congress. Ramaphosa was delivering a Chris Hani Memorial Lecture in Uitenhage in the Eastern Cape yesterday. He added his support for a Judicial Commission of Inquiry into the matter.
The Deputy President did not mince his words. He said the recent cabinet reshuffle had heightened tensions within the ANC.
The manner and the form recently in which the cabinet was reshuffled a few weeks ago heightened those tensions within the movement. Whether we want to dismiss it or not, the reality is that triggered the heightening of those tensions.
He said the party was in deep crisis and rot had set in. The allegations of state capture needed to be addressed as a matter of urgency.
The ANC, therefore, should support the establishment of an effective, credible mechanism to investigate these claims. And a judicial commission of inquiry has been suggested. I support, or there should be a judicial commission of inquiry.
Addressing a home crowd, Jonas praised the SACP for speaking out against those who defied democracy. He said the ANC used to be led by visionaries. He said the ANC had learned nothing from the loss of a number of metros in the August poll.
If we continue to ignore these signs, we must actually bear in mind that there will be a danger that our hard-won democracy will become something that we talk about, lost in our lifetime.
It was not all bad news. Ramaphosa said the upcoming ANC's 54th elective conference in December was the time for change. Janine Lee, SABC News, Uitenhage.
President Jacob Zuma is expected to launch a multi-million rand economic development project at Harris Smith tomorrow. Now, the project will create more than 25,000 job opportunities for the Maluti Apofong municipality in the Eastern Free State.
According to the 2011 statistics, the municipality has more than 350,000 people and more than 40% are unemployed, and these are mainly young people. Poverty levels have reached astronomical proportions. Many factories remain closed. The once booming taxi industry has also been adversely affected, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. President Zuma will launch the Special Economic Zone. The Maluti Apofong is upbeat.
It's going to be 25,000 permanent jobs that are going to be created for the people of Maluti Apofong, not only for the people of Harrismith, but for the entire community of Maluti Apofong.
The new economic hub is situated at major interchanges of national roads. The much-needed investment will also benefit small businesses.
All the companies that are coming here, we want them to partner with local business so that this business, young local business can work on increasing the number of employed people in our area.
A key objective, the eradication of poverty. But for now, casual jobs and street vendors remain a key way of life.
I wish Mr. Zuma can give us money to start a business.
I wish government could help us to build shelters for us because we are struggling here outside.
The project, once operational, will reduce traffic congestion on the N3.
To the state attorney reiterating their client's position that he would resume his duties today. Police Minister Fikile Mbalula has meanwhile appointed General Yolisa Matakata to act in Ntlemeza's position. Ntlemeza's lawyer says that he has the legal right to remain in office pending a High Court judgment setting aside his appointment as unlawful. Police Ministry spokesperson Vuyo Manga says that SAPS has to deal with the matter as Ntlemeza is employed by them. The triple murder trial of Henry van Breda is expected to begin in the Cape Town High Court today. Van Breda is accused of killing his parents and brother with an axe at the luxury De Zalze golf estate in Stellenbosch in 2015. Van Breda is expected to enter a plea today. The trial was postponed last month to allow the judge, Siraj Desai, to make a ruling on the presence of video cameras in court. Van Breda initially told police that his family was attacked, but handed himself over to police more than a year after the killings. He's also accused of attempted murder of his sister Marley, who escaped with severe head injuries. Van Breda, who's out on bail of 100,000 rand, also faces a charge of defeating the ends of justice. News from abroad now to the elections in France. Vive la France, they say. Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are set to face each other in the May 7th runoff to become the French president.
Set to go head-to-head for the French presidency. Centrist Emmanuel Macron clinching the top spot in early projections of round one of voting on Sunday evening. And hot on his heels, far-right leader Marine Le Pen. Voting closed at 6 p.m. local time after French citizens at home and abroad cast their ballots throughout the day. The race had been too close to call up to the last minute. The second round runoff is in a fortnight's time on Sunday, May the 7th. Whatever the outcome, it'll mean a redrawing of France's political landscape.
Now, today we're focusing on churches and, of course, the pastor that was arrested for molesting 30 girls in his church. So we are conducting a poll. We'd like to find out from you where you stand on this matter, because we're asking you the question on the poll: should all churches be regulated now following Tim Omotoso's arrest? So 76% of you are saying yes, and 24% are saying no. There's 203 votes in, 22 hours left to vote. You can keep on voting, and we'll also take some of your comments. So let's start off that conversation this morning. Let's go over to Eben.
Yeah, thanks, Elvis. Very good morning. Let's just recap quickly. Last week, the shocking revelation of a Durban-based pastor surfaced. The Hawks arrested the controversial Nigerian pastor Timothy Omotoso at Port Elizabeth Airport. That happened late last week for alleged sexual assault of around 30 of his congregants. He's accused of taking girls to his Mhlanga house in KwaZulu-Natal, where he then allegedly sexually molested them. Let's look back on this story quick.
This charismatic pastor seemingly gone to ground. This as more victims come forward. The prophet is said to have lured them to his upmarket Mhlanga home, slept with them and refused to let them go.
You know, I was very young. I know there are girls who experienced this much younger than I was, but I wasn't mentally capable of understanding.
He took off my pants. I was wearing pants that time. And then when I stopped him, he said, I'm his girlfriend now, so I mustn't worry about anything.
The Hawks were hot on Omotoso's trail. His whereabouts confirmed at this venue for Friday's Easter service, where he was supposed to be apprehended.
We were told by the Hawks that we have to be on standby because there's going to be an arrest of a Nigerian pastor in Bloemfontein. And the Hawks personnel were traveling from the Eastern Cape to Bloemfontein to conduct that arrest. He was here on a Friday. Unfortunately, on Saturday and Sunday, he was not here because seemingly he received a tip-off that he's going to be arrested.
But the elite unit has poured cold water on allegations that they arrived too late.
We cannot always be the one to blame, like what people believe, that we're not there on time, or maybe we dragged our feet. No, we were going there on schedule. And we were quite aware that the suspect somewhere, somehow, might not be there because of information that he had. But like I'm saying, our case is very strong and it's very tight. It's not bungled at all.
Police say they are taking statements from more victims and vow to have Omotoso behind bars before the end of the week. Attempts to contact his lawyer were unsuccessful. Criselda Lewis, SABC News.
Yeah, towards the end of last week, the Hawks were in hot pursuit of Prophet Timothy Omotoso who we know is the founder of the Jesus Dominion International Church. They eventually then arrested him on Thursday at the PE airport. As we saw, he's alleged to have sexually abused young women in the church. Some say they were as young as 14 years old over many, many years. Now, the scale of the alleged crime is across a number of provinces. These include the Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and in Mpumalanga, where as many as 30 women have now come forward to tell their stories. Now, possible charges include statutory rape as well as human trafficking. Omotoso, of course, he's alleged to have transported the young women from their homes to his plush house in Mpumalanga, where he then allegedly had his way with them. Now, in studio, we are fortunate this morning to have the man who led this investigation, Special Assignment Producer Lee McCabe. Lee, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Eben.
Nice to have you with us, specifically on this story, because you're the man that sort of ran point on this story. Just tell us the journey that you've made with this particular story.
About 4 months ago, we were approached by a number of young women that alleged that they were sexually victimized by the pastor Timothy Omotoso. We started doing our research on it. I personally flew down to Port Elizabeth to talk to some of them, as well as in Secunda and in all over the country. We started interviewing many of the young women, and that's when we started doing more legwork on the fact that there was a house in Umhlanga that many of them say that they were trafficked to. Now, trafficking not only constitutes moving from one country to the other, but also from one province to the other.
Yeah. How were these women swayed, if you can call it that? Was there an enabler? Was there a network of enablers that work with the pastor?
Now, with regards to what we found is with human trafficking per se, it can't happen without what you would call a recruiter. And in the case of the young women that we spoke to, all of them were approached by certain recruiters in the church because the approach allegedly wasn't made directly by the pastor, but he would send young women or older women in the church to approach the young women. Yeah. And then numbers would be exchanged. They would then be invited to a house in Umhlanga. And this is where the alleged seduction or the sexual molestation would happen.
What's the most shocking findings? We know about there are 14-year-old girls. What were some of the other stuff that shocked you?
You know, we went, as you know, the program is investigative, and many times we work undercover. I think one of the most disturbing things that we came across was when our investigator infiltrated the congregation in Durban and found that the congregants were praying for any enemies of their pastor to be killed. And I found that very irregular because that's not the kind of thing to be killed. And you wouldn't consider that to be normally the kind of environment that one would consider or expect in a church.
Now, of course, last week we did something on it after your story surfaced, and they're very active, the congregants, also on social media and stuff. Did you at any time feel threatened by you or your team members, by members of the congregation, or threatened messages even?
Fortunately, we haven't been threatened. But one thing I will say, and it's a concern that I have, that many of the young women, after we broadcast the program, many of the young women have been threatened and are currently living in fear because of threats that they have received by anonymous callers, by social media. And what they do is they set up fake Facebook accounts and then send out these threats to the young women. And that is something that I would like to talk to the Hawks about as a matter of urgency.
Within that sort of context as well, there seems to be justification on the part of these congregates for what the pastor did. For instance, the justification is, oh, but it's okay because he's done so much good. Is that the sense that you get within this congregation?
Most definitely, and in fact, in my view, they view him as a demigod. And in the last time I checked, one prays to God, not to a man, or bow to God as opposed to a man. And I think the importance of regulation when it comes to religious organizations in South Africa is key at this stage.
Yeah, we've spoken to the CRL many times, and they're, of course, at the forefront of this process. We'll talk to them in the next hour again to kind of recap where we are now and see all those kinds of things. But this trial is going to be a sensational trial, obviously. That's to follow. You're obviously going to follow the trial, but what's the latest? Is there anything new developments in the story, or what are you guys going to do at Special Assignment next?
We want to endeavor to look into a follow-up program that, because for one, there's many more victims that have come forward, and many date back quite a considerable amount of years. We also want to look at the fact and the possibility that this is not the first time that Pastor Timothy Omotosa has done this.
Yeah.
And those are things that we want to look into in part two. We also want to look at more evidence with regards to the allegations by certain women that they have had children with the pastor at the very young age.
Yeah, we heard about some of this, and at the moment it's only rumors amongst my team members, where we heard about, of course, the alleged pregnancies of young women at the time. Are we going to need to do wider investigations in South Africa into charismatic churches? Because it seems to be a problem that keeps on popping up and escalating even.
I think it's key that there's a peer review mechanism put in place. And this obviously would be guided by the CRL, because it is important that just because you say that you are a man of God and you have a calling, that these checks need to be done in terms of your credibility to avoid scenarios where vulnerable people like young women, young men are put at risk. It's the right thing to do in my view.
Well, regulation, will it be something that will help, or is this a rabbit hole that's simply just too deep and will get deeper?
I believe it will help. There needs to be accountability measures put in place. We've seen with the pastor of doom scenario very earlier, and with regards to certain things and practices. There is a very thin line between being a religious fanatic and becoming a cult, in my view. And when an organization starts to exhibit cult traits, it is important to manage it, because we do not want to find ourselves in a predicament where it's too late.
Yeah, it's about being prevention, really.
Absolutely.
And seeing the warning signs, because they're normally quite clear for everyone to see. Lee, thank you for coming in today. It's an incredible story, and we look forward to the next installment of it.
Thank you, Eben. Thank you for having me.
That's Special Assignment Producer Lee McCabe, who's done the investigation into, of course, the Omotosa case, as it is. We've been asking you the question. It all relates around the church, of course. Money and the church. What are your views on money on the church? And also, of course, we're running a poll, but that's the question. Let's just have a look at what you guys are tweeting us with regards to money and the church today. This one from Dipansu, who says, with the level of cult-like churches, yes, they're using people's desperation for their monetary benefits. Yes, we'll talk about that desperation to an expert a little bit later. Mzukisi Silandela says, Newsroom, these charismatic churches preach money and promise people to contribute a lot so that God can bless them. Yes, this is the time of the prosperity gospel, as they call it. Dipansu comes back and says, churches have become business ventures. Why are they selling God? These pastors are living lavish lives. It's appalling, in capital letters. This one from Andrew, who says, for the ministry of Christ to expand, to go all over and tell people about Christ, money is needed. Justification is needed. Siafana says, in these days, money comes first, then other things follows, he says. Is that for real, Siafana? That's about the moral compass we talk about. Keep tweeting us. We love your views here on the Newsroom Show. Let's just take a look at our picture of the day quickly. This one comes from Jesus Fave, and it's captioned, this shocking story, our lead story on the news today, about this horror crash that we've seen in Bronkhorstspruit, and the image of the taxi involved in this Bronkhorstspruit accident. Completely gutted, it says, and of course 18 lives lost. And weekly, for the last few weeks, we've seen these horror taxi crashes on our roads here in South Africa, with dozens and dozens and dozens always in its wake. Anyhow, Take a look now at our comment of the day. This one comes from Les Walters, who says, dietitians, egg on their face. Hopefully egg whites only, and that's no yolk. Yes, talking about Tim Noakes. That's what he's talking about. Tim Noakes won his case. He's been vindicated after much malignment over the last couple of years for his outlook on the modern day diet, really. Now, courts are on. It's Monday morning. Let's go to Limpopo with a trial of 18 people arrested for allegedly setting alight vehicles during a protest in Steelpoort in Limpopo is expected to start in the Sekhukhune Regional Court. Down in the Western Cape, the trial of former Western Cape Police Commissioner Arno Lamour and his 4 co-accused are set to start in the High Court. Then in Gauteng, the sentencing of convicted murderer and former ANC Youth League leader Patrick Lusani is expected to commence today in the Randburg Magistrates Court. And finally, the Western Cape will see the triple murder trial of Henry van Breda will start there today as well. He's, of course, accused of killing his parents and brother with an axe at the luxury De Zalzegov estate in Stellenbosch in 2015. We're going to take a short commercial break here with Newsroom. We're talking about, commercialization of religion today for the entire show. It should be interesting. Interact with us. We'll be with more after a short break.
We do not just speak. We let every voice in our nation find full expression in language and in culture. We do not just teach. We empower all people with education. We do not just bring you the news. We place you where the news is happening. We do not just entertain. We take you on journeys. We do not just broadcast sport. We create an arena for sporting heroes to inspire you. Ours is not just a job, it's a calling to ensure that everyone in our nation is informed, educated, and entertained. We're able to do this because you do your part. SABC TV licenses. It's all made possible by you.
Now, we are conducting that poll for you today and want to find out from you, do you think that churches should be regulated? Let's take a look at what you have to say on the poll there. All churches, should they be regulated? 213 votes in, 77% of you are saying yes, 23% are saying no. And you guys also tweeting us on the subject, so let us see what you have to say. Lena says, churches are a religious business, one that does not get taxed or regulated. It's high time for regulation, says Lena M. George says, how can one's belief be regulated? And it's not like they are forced to do those certain practices. Well, so says George. Nash says, they're taking advantage of the desperate congregants big time. It's a you snooze, you lose game, period. This one from Andrew says, I'm not surprised by evil that is taking place in government and churches. These are the last days, says Andrew. Ra says, no one can regulate the church. Any attempt will fail dismally. Now, these are some of your comments. You can keep them coming as we continue our discussion and our focus this morning on churches. Now, with the news of pastors calling on congregants to perform acts of faith or to commit activities that could put their lives at risk, there have been a number of investigations into pastors and self-proclaimed prophets. Nigerian journalist Solomon Azang Ashoms has been investigating several pastors, including the Durban-based pastor Timothy Omotoso, who was facing a string of sexual assault allegations. Last week, he was arrested and is set to remain behind bars for at least 2 weeks. Now, to tell us more about this, we're joined via Skype by Solomon in Nigeria. Very good morning to you, Solomon, and welcome.
Thanks so much. Good to be with you.
Now, tell us about your investigation into Prophet Timothy Omotoso and what additional information do you have that we don't have about him?
Well, I was contacted about 5-6 months ago by a group of young people who actually were asked to contact me, maybe because of what I do, just trying to make sure that people who are false prophets are, exposed. They told me quite a lot about the girls that were being sexually abused and raped, and how there was just kind of like a dictatorship in the show. And to be honest with you, I didn't know him that much then, so I had to investigate and also follow up. And I then all of a sudden started getting a lot of other messages from different people, not from the same group, and they were all telling me the same story. Girls were contacting me. There was a guy that contacted me. His girlfriend was allegedly abused by a motor show. His sister was allegedly abused. There's a girl that her cousins were recruited, and a whole lot of stuff. So I started following up, and I got his number, tried to call him several times, couldn't get across. I also got the contacts of some of the recruiters, because on every branch of his church, they claim he has recruiters in every branch. There's a branch in Secunda, Bloemfontein, Elizabeth, Durban, Pretoria, and everywhere. So he brings them in. But the one thing I've found that is true is just a similarity in all the stories that they told me. The way that he lured them in, the father figure perspective that he brings in. He tried to prey on vulnerable young women through music. If you know something about Timamoto Show, when he was in Nigeria about 20, 30 years ago, he was a member of a very popular music group led by a guy called Ebenezer Obey. He's very popular. So he's very musically inclined. That's why he started putting together groups and choirs in South Africa, using young people, promising them stardom and fame and money, and bringing them in. And that is what I discovered, that the story was very, very similar. And there's no doubt about it, also watching Special Assignment and the stories and how the girls narrated their stories. And for me, his church is a cult. That's what it is. There's no any other way to call it. He is a cult leader. The way authority is being abused, the way people are being manipulated, the way people are told to do certain things. He's aware that he has a problem with sex and women, and he does say that in some of his sermons. And I managed to get a clip, an audio clip, about 13 minutes of him, confessing to that, but trying to justify that, saying no one is perfect, that God knows that he is not a perfect man. And also, he said women come to him, he doesn't force them. So, and he was talking about his penis, that his penis has wisdom. He can give them more, he can give them more sex, so they can go anywhere they want to go to. No one can accuse him of doing that. But how can a pastor say that? Mm-hmm. And when I discovered that, and the person that gave me that audio clip didn't want to disclose that to anybody.
Now, you're talking about recruiters, Solomon. Is that recruiters to become congregants of the church or for sexual exploits?
It's more to become close to the pastor, one, to become a member of one of the music groups that he runs. He runs different music groups. There's one, I think, called Crystalite. They actually won the Crown Gospel Awards not long ago. There's a choir that he has. They do travel around the country and travel overseas sometimes. So the girls, being a 17-year-old, 20-year-old, and musically, you were gifted and being promised all this, it's definitely something very attractive. So you get recruited to come to Durban and in that we all know about, where he housed them. He also lives there technically, and that is where he allegedly has sexually abused them. So you get promised all this, and for a lot of this young vulnerable, privilege called by the pastor to come and to be chosen. So the recruiter, basically, he goes to a branch or they have a meeting, and he identifies. And afterwards, he tells one of the recruiters, I want that girl. So it's not left for the recruiter to try to convince the girl to say, look, the prophet wants to see you in Durban. Maybe you live in PE or you live in Bloemfontein. So he will arrange a flight for you. They will arrange everything for you. And for a lot of the girls, it's like, wow, what a privilege, you know. But some of them that we spoke to, they were a bit skeptical when they were first approached by the recruiters. Why does he want to see me? So they were a bit suspicious, but not really sure, because there's this respect of elders and respect of pastors. So they just give in and they fly to Durban. And that is where it all starts from, you know, day one, where, you know, come to my office and, you know, what do you need? What do you want? I will take care of you. And the next time, come give me a massage, come rub my feet. And then one thing leads to another. Some of them, I know quite a few of them that actually got to that level and they say, no, I'm not going to do it. And they run away. You know, I have had stories like that. And some of them got to a place where they allowed him to have sex with them. And some of them actually, when he first started, this is the similar thing. When he first started, for a lot of the girls, he didn't penetrate them sexually. That was what they told me. For a lot of them, initially, he just, you know, put his penis between their laps and have some sort of, you know, push, and then ejaculates over them. That was how he used to, you know, do with them. Now, but later on, then penetration started.
Mm-hmm. Now, Solomon, you're investigating a number of pastors. Are you seeing similar trends among these type of pastors and churches that you're investigating?
You would not believe it, because right now my Facebook inbox is just daily receiving a lot of allegations and stories from women all over South Africa, from stories in Vanda, stories in Port Elizabeth, in Johannesburg, in Durban, almost the same story of abuse, the same story of spiritual manipulation, spiritual abuse, of rape. There's a girl that contacted me. She was raped long time ago because the pastor used to help out with her school fees, and her parents believed him. And she had never told her parents. She just recently opened up. She's 35. She's struggling, and this has happened long time ago. So there are so many of those stories in different churches, sadly. Not every church is bad. Not every pastor is bad, but we have a lot of pastors. And I think one of the major reasons is because a lot of pastors, instead of depending on the power of God, they actually go to like witch doctors to get, you know, satanic powers, to get, you know, powers that is not really should be operating in church. And then they bring it in, and part of the covenant that you go in with this witchcraft or witch doctors is for you to continually have sexual relationship with women. Every week there should be a number of women that you sleep with. And this is the catch also. Some of them target girls that are virgins to sleep with them, you know? So you have to understand the spiritual side of it, which gives them some sort of artificial power, diabolic power. They becomes like, you know, charlatans, and they do certain things in church that we think is real, but behind the scene, it's not really real.
Solomon Sir, thank you so much for that report there. That was our Solomon Ashoms. He's the Nigerian journalist, Azang Ashoms, that's been investigating several pastors in the country, and he says there's an increase of these type of practices around the country. We'll continue with this discussion throughout the day, so you have to stay tuned. But let's now take a look at what's happening on Facebook page and on the Twitter handle, and see what you are saying to us this morning. This one coming from Oscar says that the churches are now depriving people and takes from the poor to enrich the so-called prophets. This one from Sipo says, some are here in South Africa to make money because they saw the opportunity to it. They say they are sent by God, which is complete nonsense, says Sipo. Lachasa Butler Molo says, either rich or poor, money comes first at our new church. Eish, no more free services, says Lachasa. Onuke says, you can't sell Jesus. Money is to satisfy their lavish desire. They are not of God, but Satan. This one from Sambulo says, money and the church, you need money to propagate the gospel. However, excesses need to be attended to. These are some of your comments on the question that we posed to you, whether or not churches should be regulated. Please let us know what's on your mind. We'll read your comments as we continue to continue the show today. Let's now take a look at your newspapers from around the globe. And the front page is there. We start off in Europe. The Times reports that ministers and civil servants should be banned from taking up lucrative private sector jobs for 2 years when they leave office to end Whitehall's revolving door scandal. Moving to New York, the Wall Street Journal. Let's see if we can get that up and running. They say that the centrist Emmanuel Macron and the far-right politician Marine Le Pen led the first round of voting in France's presidential election as voters redrew the political map, placing the European Union at the center of a new political divide. We apologize for not having that one on your screen right now. But finally, let's move to Israel and see if we have the Jerusalem Post up. Well, they report that the German Interior Ministry notified a Left Party deputy last week that agents from Iran have been some of the most active spies in the Federal Republic between 2007 and 2017, including assassination attempts on Israeli advocates. These are some of your newspapers from around the globe. We apologize for not having the pics up there, but we'll see if we can get it right next time. Let's now take a break. When we come back, we continue this discussion on whether charismatic churches should be regulated in South Africa.
Now, this is Trends, of course, your one-stop serving of all that's juicy and trending in the world of entertainment and showbiz. My name, of course, is Refiel Wemwilo.
I'm Dr. Sello Mutaung, and this is Our Talk.
A very good morning and welcome to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jolly.
My name is Dumile Matters.
William Mulabati.
My name is Mpo. What time is it? It's question time.
For your daily dose of current affairs, tune in to the SABC News Channel.
A conscious move from being a street kid to being a barrister of note.
Keep on praying for me to make a better life.
A creative application of the mind on an essential need, water in wheelbarrow containers.
How about if we were to come up with an idea of an enclosed container that sits on top of the frame of a wheelbarrow?
With the sharing of resources, a boy with Russell Silver syndrome receives medication.
The fact that you just said to me, well, you're covered for next month, that's amazing.
So that's the medication.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
Hello again. The Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Rights of Communities is soon set to create a regulatory organisation for churches not belonging to any of the current regulatory bodies. This in light of several cases of charismatic pastors using controversial teaching methods. In the latest case, Nigerian pastor Tim Omotoso is accused of sexual assault and rape. However, Nigerian pastors in South Africa are being monitored. And to talk to us a little bit more about this, we are joined in studio by the Vice President of the Nigerian Pastors Association in South Africa, Pastor Osi Festus, as well as the National President, Bishop Ranti Famodona. Very good morning to you, gentlemen. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Bishop, if I can start with you, maybe. You can maybe just give us your reaction as the head of the organisation of the case regarding Pastor Timothy Omotoso.
All right. It's so saddening. And as Nigerian pastors in South Africa, we're not just here to just play around. We're here for a purpose. You know, being called is one, character is another thing. And we as Nigerian Pastors Association in South Africa, we constitute honest and credible Nigerian pastors that are here to work and to show love, the love of the gospel of the Calvary cross to the people of South Africa. And hearing these allegations being melted against Nigerian pastor, when you see what gives us concern is the Nigerian pastor that is being mentioned on the social media and all over. It's like it's almost branding Nigerian pastors in this case, with this case. And we're here to just let the South African community know that we are not like this. We are not sent to bring chaos. We're not sent to bring the people of South Africa down. We are here. In fact, what makes us to stand up and say that we should have an association that we bring together all Nigerian pastors in order to put measures in place in case there are excesses coming up. These are just allegations on ground. And thank God we have the judiciary. And thank God for South Africa being a constitutional and a democratic nation. They have waded into the case. Let's just follow it as it were and let the law take its good course.
Pastor Festus, I'd like to ask you about spiritual manipulation. Because here in South Africa, we have a sense that spiritual manipulation is at an all-time high. How do you view spiritual manipulation, and how do you view what is happening with regards to these processes in South Africa?
Spiritual manipulation is a terrible thing. Personally, as pastor, one of the things we preach against is manipulation. Because when you begin to manipulate people, you make them to do things against their will. Even God, we don't want you to do things against your will. He said, choose you this day whom you will serve. He said, but I and my household, when we serve the Lord, he was not manipulating them. So we preach against it. The situation where you begin to manipulate people to do things that are against their wish, we view it as an evil thing. And no man of God, no pastor, no matter whom you call yourself, no matter whatever title, you shouldn't be involved in manipulating people. I think the basic thing every man of God should have as the first prerequisite to preach is that you have the love of the people in the heart. When you have the love of the people in the heart, you cannot manipulate them.
Bishop, I want to talk to you about the South African market. We see a lot of churches that are starting in South Africa in the last decade or so, and it seems that there are lots of pastors coming from all over Africa coming to South Africa to start churches. What do you think is so appealing about the South African faith market, if you can call it that?
All right. You know, we are spiritual people and we are pastors, and over the years, before now, even in the 70s, for some of us that have been on ground, that have been in the faith, even in the early 80s, we've been hearing prophecies as it has to do with God's mandate on South Africa, what God wants to do through South Africa. Even when the freedom has not come as a den, God has been telling a lot of ministers of God from the US, from all over Europe and all the rest in Africa. So it's not just a now thing. It's not just about now. God has South Africa as a nation in mind. And the influx of foreign pastors in South Africa is not new, but the issue is this, and that's why Nigerian Pastors Association South Africa, as a covering the nationalities and pastors from Nigeria, we have to stand up and say that if we just keep quiet and allow everybody to just operate individually, it may be chaotic. Then let's come together and see how we can start something. About over 7 years ago, trying to put some measures down, some trainings, because being called is one, being trained is another. So we just want to say this character formulation must be put in place so that you don't misuse your opportunity. You don't misuse the grace that God has given to you.
Pastor Festus, I want to talk about your organization and the work that you do with pastors and those that belong to your organization. Tell us about this, and how do you monitor that they behave in an appropriate manner?
Okay, thank you. We started the organization 7 years ago. one of the reasons that made us to start the organization is because we began to see Nigerian pastors coming out in the news for wrong reasons. And Nigerian pastors are not to be that. We said, okay, we have to come together and then see ourselves and organize ourselves and look at ourselves and see if these things that is being said all over is true. Then we came together in 2010 and the organization was formed, registered. Then we started operating. What are we doing to regulate them? We organize several workshops.
Yeah.
We organize several workshops. In fact, in May, we are hoping to organize another one where we bring our pastors together that belong to our organization. Because it is not all Nigerians, pastors in South Africa belong to us. Yes. So they come to us, then we teach them. We understand the land. We came here to do humanitarian work. We must do good and not evil. We must love people.
You talk about do good, not evil. I want to ask you, Bishop, how do you view the acts that are being perpetrated in the name of God? And it's not just Nigerian pastors. We see the rise of this. We see people being fed snakes to eat, petrol to drink. We see young women being raped in this case. But there are many, many, many stories like this in South Africa, so much so that the CRL is now starting to think about more regulation. Is this the devil's work in the name of God?
Well, Jesus Christ was saying that he sent us as sheep among the wolves in the world. So, and if you look at the characteristics of sheep are gentle, they are calm, they are not riotous. The image God has, Jesus Christ has sent us to portray is the image of good. The gospel of Jesus Christ is not a gospel that dehumanizes people. All the likes of eating snakes and all the rest. Let me tell you something. You can't justify your evil act under some form of religion. If something is wrong, it's wrong. Let's call it spade a spade. And we are not with anything called shamanism, evil, anything that is occultic. The gospel is so straight, open to us, that this is the good heart of the Lord Jesus Christ. Show it to humanity.
Money and the church. In conclusion, Pastor Festus, has it become a problem?
I want to dive into about the same thing I want to say. You see, the people must know that there are different kinds of humanity, and this is where we have to come in. Different personalities that portray themselves as pastors. It grieves my heart and the heart of our organization when we begin to see this. You see people taking the vulnerability of people, preying on them. It is evil. When we come to money, we cannot rule out money from the church. But what happens is that money should be properly monitored in the church. The church, the word money, you know, when we talk about money, people, normally what people talk about is that pastors, they love money. But let me say this, coming to understand it from the standpoint of ministry, we will understand that there is no way a pastor can walk and then do the work of shepherding and preaching without the help of money. However, we cannot underrule the fact that there are people that are misusing this opportunity. The issue of money. That is why we say that the law has to come in. You see,
the law will have to take its course, you say.
Yes.
From the Nigerian Pastors Association, thank you very much for joining us today. Bishop Ranti Famodun and, of course, Pastor O.C. Festus, talking about the role that they're playing with regards to not just Nigerian pastors in South Africa, but all pastors that belong to their organization. Thank you once again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we're going to, well, in the next hour, we're going to be talking to the CRL about the framework that they're putting in place to deal with the issue of errant pastors and other religious practitioners. You're watching Newsroom. We'll be back after a short break.
When cell phones get cut off, people say Mdluli was listening. Who are you? We have to approach Dennis Breitenbach, who was the prosecutor by then.
The DA parliamentarian?
That's correct. The one who's making halabaloo about me.
There are allegations here that you abused the slush fund. What do you say to that?
We don't have slush fund. I don't know about slush fund.
I respect the fact that you cannot talk a lot about the Secret Service and all that. I guess that's the norm internationally.
Yeah.
But how do we know that you, Richard Ndluli, are not abusing the funds of the state? You are counted amongst the president's men. Are you?
That is rubbish.
Also the matter of General Boysen in KZN. He's not speaking very well of you.
No, that one is talking rubbish.
You are perceived to be very powerful, General, and you know, people who don't agree with you seem to pay the price. What is happening with the old Paramribe case?
No, I'm surprised because, as I've said, I'm a person of people.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jali. What has been happening on the digital front?
To win the CAF Championship was a huge thing, and perhaps we ought to have celebrated him even more.
Absolutely.
73% of our schools, regardless whether they're in the township or they're in urban areas, if you go to those schools, you are guaranteed a matric pass.
It is the one thing that we haven't done well as a country. We have thrown money at it. I mean, if you ask for figures, you'll be told we're spending well in education.
90 billion.
But the performance of the system has not been good enough.
A presumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 Al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded. And we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water because there's no water in a river. And if the water is coming back, then it's full of mud.
Those who can pray and those who can do any miracle to make sure that we've got enough rain, give it a try.
Welcome back. It's just gone 10 o'clock Central African time. Very good morning to you. I'm with Kendall Mahamati. Morning, Kendall.
Very good morning to you. Very interesting, very hot topic you've got on the cards this morning.
Yeah, religion always brings out interesting discussions. Of course, we'll continue to focus on the church in the next hour, but we've got a lot of other news to do. So we've been asking your views on our question of the day, which says, what are your views on money and the church, Kendall? And people are tweeting us, huh?
Yeah, no, they've not been stopping at all. Sipo, for example, comes with pastors of today are not trusted. They misuse the word of God to enrich themselves. It's the devil's work in churches now.
Oscar Madike says, the churches are now depriving people and take from the poor to enrich them so-called prophets.
And Sipo carries on saying some are here in South Africa to make money because they saw the opportunity of it. They say they're sent by God, which is nonsense.
Yeah, that was what came out of our previous interview. Now, Lechasa tweets us, he says, either rich or poor, money comes first at our new church. Ish, no more free service. Yes, Lechasa, no more free service.
Onuka Christian says you can't sell Jesus. Money is to satisfy their lavish desires. they're not of God but Satan.
Yeah, that's kind of a constant theme that comes out of it. Of course, should it be regulated? That's the poll we put up. A little bit later this hour, we'll be talking to the CRL about exactly this and where the processes are. We've got 235 votes in, and the majority say yes, it's time, Kendall.
Absolutely. Very interesting that it's actually very clear-cut that only 23% believe that churches should not be regulated, whereas everybody else is 77% regulation is necessary. Something from outside the churches need to be looking over them.
Spesihle Mhlongo says newsroom, all institutions and organizations such as churches that seek to exploit the public and extort them should be scrutinized.
See, Paul goes on, says, yes, yes, yes. People need to be vigilant. These are vultures. They're not pastors. They have fancy cars and bodyguards, even worse.
KB comes and says no one must try and regulate churches unless anyone is forced by law to go to church. But what about the abuse of the innocent?
Yes, Onike talks about Timo Motoshe as well. He says he's a disgrace, sex-starved and belongs to the hottest part of hell.
Tough words there from Onupe Christian. But keep tweeting us, guys. It's that topic we're dealing with. Money, church, and of course pastors that are a little bit wayward. We'll talk to the CRL a little bit later, but let's first get our top stories at this hour. Government officials are visiting two schools, Mahlenga Secondary and Reformo Primary in Bronkhorstspruit after a horror crash there the weekend. The police ministry says former Hawks boss burning in Clemenza is reporting for duty today is merely an operational matter. In France, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen says they are set to face each other in a May the 7th runoff election to become the French president. Those are your top stories right now. Let's go to Kendall for a sports update.
Even one of the things that if I were tweeting on that particular hot topic of today, I'd be saying one of the things it says in the Bible is this: you should judge a tree by its fruits.
Yep, that is true. And sometimes it's clear to see, but I don't think people, when they're desperate, want to see these kinds of truths.
Yes, and I think that's what some people are saying. These pastors are relying on the lack of knowledge that these people have got.
For
well,
sure.
you know, enough about that. Let's talk about all the good things that happened over the weekend. As I said earlier on, quite a lot in the world of sports. And if you're unlucky, you had nothing to celebrate. But if you're like the rest of us, you had at least something to celebrate. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
They're away together. Another great start by Akani Simbine. Wait for Nikak's left behind. Thunder Roto's running well. It's Simbine and Roto at the moment. Here comes Fanikak. It's Akani Simbine taking it.
Sprint Kings Akani Simbine and Wait for Nikak hold true to the hype as the crowds fill up watch to witness South Africa's finest in action.
Fanikak going. Simbine chasing. Nuklela. Wait for Nikak. 19.90 seconds.
Although the Pirates looking to create an opportunity of their own. It was Ngosi who found Rahale. And indeed, is that the winner by Gabuza?
As SuperSport United dumped Kaizer Chiefs out of the Nedbank Cup, Orlando Pirates secured their passage to the semi-finals with a 2-1 victory over Bloem Celtic. And in La Liga, Lionel Messi put Real Madrid to the sword with his 500th goal for Barcelona, blowing the league title race wide open.
Lionel Messi!
Oh my goodness!
Lionel Messi does it again. He's superhuman. Oh, Lionel Messi has just exploded La Liga into life. Another chapter in the incredible story of this little man.
Manchester United showed depth of character. They continue their fight for a top 4 finish with a controlled 2-0 victory over Burnley.
Wayne Rooney for Manchester United.
And on I could have carried on, but enough of that for now. Back to the main desk with Yibben for the news.
Yeah, thanks, Kendall. Very good morning to you. Our top story. Government officials are visiting two schools, Mahlenga Secondary and Refano Primary in Bronkhorstspruit this morning. 18 learners, 4 from Mahlenga Secondary and 14 from Refano Primary, as well as 2 adults, lost their lives when a minibus taxi collided with a truck on Friday. Only one body has been identified thus far.
A heartbroken mother and father, having lost 2 children, Siyabonga and Tembelane Maziba, were in grade 1 and 6 respectively. The family grateful for the support it's receiving.
I appreciate what the government is doing for me since I don't have anything.
Other grief-stricken parents were comforted by government officials. 14 pupils were from Refano Primary and 4 from Mhlengi Secondary School. The families are kept abreast of developments and plans. Funeral arrangements will be made once DNA tests are finalized in 5 days. Injured pupils will also be supported.
Provide support to families, both families of the deceased and those that are injured. We've put counsellors to ensure that there is support. We've also placed counsellors to come to school.
Cold comforts to families. The road is also receiving attention.
The issue of the road is in the pipeline of the Mpumalanga government, which is going to start constructing that particular road by the beginning of November 2018. But the provincial government is taking care of that particular road.
Fellow school pupils will receive counseling from Monday.
Now, for an update, we are joined by Fences Timo. He's at the Refano Primary School, just outside of Bronkhorstspruit. Very good morning to you, Fences. Just tell us about this visit by the Education Minister there this morning.
Yes, the minister was at pains to actually try to console some of the learners here at Refano. We're actually coming to you live from Bronkhorstspruit at Refano Primary School, where about 14 learners actually passed on following the fatal crash between a minibus they were traveling in after school and a truck. So the minister was at pains. She tried to explain that we're all going to die eventually, but all we need to do is just to pray to God that He may accept our souls the moment we pass on to the other life.
Fences, only a single learner has been identified today. Do you have any idea as to that process, how that process will unfold and where we are with regards to it?
Yes, earlier on we spoke to Panyaza Lisufi, the MEC of the Gauteng Department of Education, and he also elaborated that what's going to happen is that they're going to take clothes that actually have some sort of a DNA, maybe a sweat of the deceased learner. They're going to take it to the pathologist, and they're also going to draw blood from their parents, and they're going to take a tooth from the deceased as well and try to compare as to whether the DNA samples actually match, just to determine that the child actually belongs to their rightful parents. So the process is expected to take about 5 days, which has actually delayed funeral arrangements, whereby they are awaiting the completion of the DNA test before they can start with the funeral arrangements. That's a process that's expected to take 5 days, as mentioned.
The accident itself, do we have any more detail as to what actually happened in this case?
According to some eyewitnesses, we spoke to a parent earlier on who explained that her child was actually traveling in a school bus in the front of the one that was involved in the fatal crash. What she explained was that her child actually told her that the first taxi managed to turn at an intersection, but there was a heavy truck actually approaching at fast speed, and allegedly the driver that got involved in the accident, who was driving the minibus, miscalculated the distance between the truck and the speed that the truck was traveling in and tried to intersect as well, tried to turn right, while the truck actually rammed into the vehicle, causing an explosion and leading to the deaths of 18 learners and 2 adults. But the Minister of Basic Education has urged us to actually await the completion of criminal investigations into the scene. As you remember, the scene has actually been declared a crime scene. So she's actually urged the general public to await the outcome of those investigations before preempting what exactly happened. Yes.
In conclusion, Fences, are we going to get an announcement on funeral arrangements and that kind of thing, or is it a fact that we have to wait for the DNA tests?
Yes, it is a fact that we actually have to wait for the DNA test, and then that's when dates would actually be set as to what is the plan for the funeral arrangements. There's also a committee that has been set up to actually try and, profile the families, counsel the families, and also give them support during this trying time towards the arrangement of the funerals. They're saying it's a lengthy period, it's a trying period, because, the parents are really not taking this well. It came as a shock following the accident on Friday, and they're just doing their best to try and console the parents following what happened. There's also a flag flying at half-mast here at Refano Primary School in honor of the 14 pupils that were attending here that actually died on Friday following the crash just after school when they were going home to spend the weekend with their parents.
Offensive, thank you very much for that update. There you see the flag still flying at half-mast. That's outside the Refano Primary School outside Bronkhorstspruit in Mpumalanga, where, well, 14 primary school learners from that school died. 4 others from the local high school there, with 2 adults also died in a horror crash on Friday. Now, we move on. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says allegations of state capture must be put to rest to safeguard the unity and cohesion of the ANC. Ramaphosa was delivering a Chris Hani Memorial Lecture in Uitenhage in the Eastern Cape yesterday. He added his support for a judicial commission of inquiry into this matter.
The Deputy President did not mince his words. He said the recent cabinet reshuffle had heightened tensions within the ANC.
The manner and the form recently in which the cabinet was reshuffled a few weeks ago heightened those tensions within the movement. Whether we want to dismiss it or not, the reality is that triggered the heightening of those tensions.
He said the party was in deep crisis and rot had set in. The allegations of state capture needed to be addressed as a matter of urgency.
The ANC, therefore, should support the establishment of an effective, credible mechanism to investigate these claims. And a judicial commission of inquiry has been suggested. I support, or there should be a judicial commission of inquiry.
Addressing a home crowd, Jonas praised the SACP for speaking out against those who defied democracy. He said the ANC used to be led by visionaries. He said the ANC had learned nothing from the loss of a number of metros in the August poll.
If we continue to ignore these signs, we must actually bear in mind that there will be a danger that our hard-won democracy will become something that we talk about, lost in our lifetime.
It was not all bad news. Ramaphosa said the upcoming ANC's 54th elective conference in December was the time for change. Janine Lee, SABC News, Uitenhage.
President Jacob Zuma is expected to launch a multi-million rand economic development project at Harry Smith tomorrow. The project will create more than 25,000 job opportunities at the Maluti Apafung municipality in the Eastern Free State.
According to the 2011 statistics, the municipality has more than 350,000 people, and more than 40% are unemployed, and these are mainly young people. Poverty levels have reached astronomical proportions. Many factories remain closed. The once booming taxi industry has also been adversely affected, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. President Zuma will launch the Special Economic Zone. The Maluti Apafung is upbeat.
It's going to be 25,000 permanent jobs that are going to be created for the people of Maluti Apafung, not only for the people of Harrismith, but for the entire community of Maluti Apafung.
The new economic hub is situated at major interchanges of national roads. The much-needed investment will also benefit small businesses.
All the companies that are coming here, we want them to partner with local business so that this business, young local business can work on increasing the number of employed people in our area.
A key objective, the eradication of poverty. But for now, casual jobs and street vendors remain a key way of life.
I wish Mr. Zuma can give us money to start a business.
I wish government could help us to build shelters for us because we are struggling here outside.
The project, once operational, will reduce traffic congestion on the N3. This will provide the much-needed break for motorists.
It's going to help us very much because as a truck driver, we are traveling long distance.
It's going to help us to limit the accident on the road, so we are happy about the hub.
This special economic zone is expected to revive the ailing economy of this largely impoverished rural municipality. Aphumelele Mdlalane, SABC News in the Eastern Free State.
The chairperson of the ANC's Economic Transformation Committee, Enoch Godongwana, says the idea of radical economic transformation has been at the center of ANC policies for years, but it's never been implemented. He was addressing party members at Ngobo in the Eastern Cape.
Enoch Godongwana stayed clear of provincial politics. His focus, the centrality of the Freedom Charter to ANC policy.
I don't think even now there's a radical document more than the Freedom Charter which have ever produced. So the centrality, our challenge is not whether we've got a radical economic transformation or not. Our challenge is implementation. That has been our challenge. And the key is how to transform state and state institutions to give effect to that.
Godongwana, head of economic transformation in the ANC, weighed in on the land expropriation without compensation debate.
Is it not better that we focus on providing support measures and infrastructure to the existing land which is available to our people before we can start saying we will destabilize the country?
Branches have been urged to be vocal at national conferences and to ask pertinent questions that could build the party. Mbasa Khwaza, SABC News, Ngobo.
The police ministry says former Hawks boss burning Ntlemeza's reporting for work today is merely an operational matter. Ntlemeza's lawyers have written to the state attorney reiterating their client's position that he would resume his duties today. Police Minister Fikile Mbalula has meanwhile appointed General Yolisa Matakata to act in Ntlemeza's position. Ntlemeza's lawyers says that he has the legal right to remain in office pending a High Court judgment setting aside his appointment as unlawful. The Police Ministry's spokesperson Vuyo Manga says the SABC has to deal with the matter as Ntlemeza is employed by them. The triple murder trial of Henry van Breda is expected to begin in the Cape Town High Court today. Van Breda is accused of killing his parents and brother with an axe at the luxury De Zalze Golf Estate in Stellenbosch in 2015. Van Breda is expected to enter a plea today. The trial was postponed last month to allow Judge Siraj Desai to make a ruling on the presence of video cameras in court. Van Breda initially told police that his family was attacked, but handed himself over more than a year after the killings. He's also accused of the attempted murder of his sister Marley, who escaped with severe head injuries. Van Breda, who is out on bail of 100,000 rand, also faces charges of defeating the ends of justice. Now we go abroad to the elections in France. Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are set to face each other in a May the 7th runoff to become the new French president.
Set to go head-to-head for the French presidency. Centrist Emmanuel Macron clinching the top spot in early projections of round one of voting on Sunday evening. And hot on his heels, far-right leader Marine Le Pen. Voting closed at 6 p.m. local time after French citizens at home and abroad cast their ballots throughout the day. The race had been too close to call up to the last minute. The second round runoff is in a fortnight's time on Sunday, May the 7th. Whatever the outcome, it'll mean a redrawing of France's political landscape.
The Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities, working towards a system that will make sure that no religious leader operates without a license. That's our focus today. Now, this comes after the latest complaints about a charismatic pastor who's accused of abusing his position within the church. But how much of a difference will this make? And is it not too late already? Well, we're joined in studio by the Deputy Chairperson of the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities, the CRL as it's known. A very good morning to Professor David Musoma. Very good morning to you.
And good morning to you.
Professor, just give us an idea, this framework that's been in the wings to regulate what is happening in the faith sector in South Africa, how far are we down the road and what is that process now?
We started the process of investigating what was then called the commercialization of religion and the abuse of people's belief system. And in our investigation, we have found that there is a need to self-regulate religious institutions. To that end, we have worked on a report which we consulted broadly with the religious institutions, religious leaders, and communities. And the report is now final. It will be submitted to Parliament on the 4th of June. For 2 days, we'll be in Parliament, and we hope that after that, we are going to be embarking on a process of amending the Act of the CRL. Some of the elements in the CRL mandates us, for example, to have a database. And database you can only have when you register people. So there is a provision already in the Act. We believe that registration of churches or religious institutions is a very important. It's a key to know how many religious institutions do we have in a country, where do they come from, where do they practice, and so forth and so forth. And we believe that that is the first start. But the second start is that we need to check who the qualifications. Yeah. Some go through ordination or whatever form of validation in terms of the profession in which they are. This will actually assist us to know. We are also coming up with a process to assist religious institutions to comply. For example, on matters of governance, on matters of tax, on matters of institutional management itself, where religious institutions are facilitated to have, for example, committees that run their organizations efficiently, and to that end, accountability, transparency. Those are the elements we feel are critical to this end.
Let's talk about spiritual manipulation now, and let's talk about South Africa being almost a fertile ground for the kind of spiritual manipulation that we see. Why is that?
We've been very fortunate that in February we assembled a number of experts from hypnotists, neuroscientists, psychologists, and so forth and so forth. They were able to reveal to us something we did not know. The use of the hypnosis, for example, as a manipulative process for this spiritual activity. And we are very, very sad because that is used as a way of spiritual empowerment, demonstrating that the prowess, they have the power, spiritual endowment, which in fact is not the case. It's merely a facade. Behind it lies this spiritual manipulation. And the danger to that is that it hypnotizes people, even to give their means of sustenance, living, what you call resources, to these particular individuals. We know of an institution in the Eastern Cape where the congregants are expected to sell their properties, to withdraw their monies, and bring to this commune. And not even to send their children to school, because school is identified to be the place of the devil. So you don't have to be knowledgeable.
Wow.
So there are children who are almost 18, 21 years old. They have never been to school as a result of this spiritual manipulation.
Is it out of hand here in South Africa?
I should think so. It's out of hand. In fact, what we have now uncovered, it's merely a tip of an iceberg. If these are going to be aggregated, we may find that the terrain is tainted beyond measure.
I want to ask you about, I spoke to the Nigerian Pastors Association a little bit earlier, and of course they have a separate entity that sits maybe outside the work that you do. Is it not time for all of these to be put in one place?
I don't think so. What we seek to do in terms of self-regulation, we want to create umbrella bodies, that no individual pastor should be a standalone. He or she should belong to a fold. And the fold should be responsible for both spiritual nurturing code of conduct, in making sure that the pastors comply in terms of the umbrella arrangement.
Yeah.
So that if somebody is out of 10, then the umbrella body takes a responsibility. If the umbrella body believes that this one is no longer fit to practice as a pastor, whatever the case may be, then they will report to CRL. CRL will then strike this individual from the role. And also that pastors must be vetted. Some of them may be pedophiles.
That's
and
correct.
they are exposed to dealing with children and women and things like that. So we need to know their history so that we can then safeguard our communities.
What about members of these congregations? What kind of recourse do you think members of a congregation should have? I say this because there's so much intimidation that goes with this kind of thing. We see enablers working with pastors to lure girls away, to intimidate members of the congregation. What kind of recourse or what kind of process must we give members of a church to follow in order to not be victimized if they have a complaint?
CRL is opened. We have a process of receiving complaints from individuals, from communities, and in some instances we're able to hide the identity of the person and deal with the matter. And we know the extent of harassment, the extent of the way in which pastors operate, because we ourselves were threatened. I mean, they came with security guards holding guns at the CRL. So we know if that can be done to a CRL, which is a Chapter 9 institution, what happens to the individual? So you can see that it goes really right through the communities. They experience this type of situation.
What's the kind of red flag that stands out that these guys have in common that people should be on the lookout for? If they see something like this, then oops, there's a problem here.
They always promise you that you will have a better life. That if they pray for you, your situation will change. And that if the more you give, the more you get blessed.
Yeah.
In the African traditional religion, they tell you, if you take this particular medicine, it will make you rich.
Yeah.
Will send you something, and this person or this particular thing will add to your fortunes.
Yeah.
These are kinds of systems that they use. I know of a white woman who came to CRL. She was desperate to have a child. And she got to be hooked by these individuals. She ended up paying 240,000 rand for a child she does not have even today.
It's an all too...
This is the extent of the gravity of the problem we have in South Africa.
Yeah, it's a very familiar story and it's not getting any better. I thank you for joining us today. Professor David Musoma is the Deputy Chairperson of the CRL, and they are being tasked with the difficult task of dealing with this issue. Of course, we've been asking you in our poll, what do you think? Should all religious activity or churches be regulated now following the latest incidences? 258 of you have voted, and more than 3/4 are saying yes, it is time for Professor Musoma and his crew to take charge of this situation. Karabo tweets us and says, yes, it's long overdue, and they should start paying tax. Yes, that by law, churches don't pay tax, of course. David Thomas says, newsroom, I don't know what we South Africans can. We are the most sinners in the world. If not so, why are so many Nigerian pastors here in South Africa? As you heard from the association earlier, they said, well, because South Africa is highly favored in volume, how come all these foreign pastors target urban areas and towns and cities? If truly God has called them to SA, why not in the rural areas? And you could go on where the work is much needed. Interesting one there. Well, these are your tweets, your views. Keep it coming, keep telling us. We're going to take a short commercial break, of course. We're dealing with money and the church. Don't forget to tweet us.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
Over 5% of the world's population, or 360 million people, has disabling hearing loss.
Sometimes babies are born that can't hear. Yeah. And especially during the pregnancy, where there's some infections that mom could pick up that can actually transmit that damage to the ear, and those children can be born deaf.
I don't look at myself as a disabled person. I looked at myself as Bruno, not with a disability. I don't have barriers. I use South African Sign Language because I have a language.
And unfortunately, we need to talk to the teenagers and the young people out there. I know it's now fine to go to the concerts and listen to that loud music, but you're actually damaging those little hair cells all the time, and you're not going to pay the price now. You're going to pay the price when you turn 45, 50, and then all of a sudden we're going to see the damage done.
For all your health news, join Health Talk every Saturday from 9 to 10.
Welcome back. Time to shift our focus a little bit. A military court in Cameroon has convicted Ahmed Abba, journalist for Radio France International's Hausa service, on charges of the non-denunciation of terrorism and laundering of the proceeds of terrorist acts. Now, Abba's lawyer, Clement Nakong, says Abba, who has been jailed since July of 2015 in relation to his reporting of Boko Haram, could face a death penalty on the first charge and the maximum of 5 years in prison on the second charge, at a sentencing hearing is scheduled for today. Now, for more on the story, we are joined in studio by the chairperson of the African Editors Forum, Jovel Rantau, and then Angela Quintal. She's the Africa Program Coordinator for the Committee to Protect Journalists. Very good morning to you, and thanks for being with us.
Good morning.
Jovel, let's start with you. On the continent, are we living in the most difficult time to be a journalist and to report and move freely now?
Yes, we are. I mean, if a journalist can walk into a press conference and then walk out, get arrested, and is not seen for 3 months by anybody's employees, family, and then is hauled before a military court and charged with all kinds of charges that have got nothing to do with his work, and could now possibly face the death penalty. I think you don't need a better example that will testify to the fact that we live in truly troubled times.
Why should the rest of the world be so concerned with the case of Ahmed Abba?
I think the rest of the world needs to be concerned because a journalist at the end of the day is someone who's out there asking questions on behalf of the people. And if a journalist can be arrested, thrown in jail for simply asking questions, can you imagine what it must be like if you are an ordinary citizen who's out there protesting or feels that the government isn't listening? Anything is possible. Can I just add, though, to what has been said? I think what is really important to realize in terms of what's happening in the continent, but also elsewhere in the world, is how legislation, anti-state legislation and legislation against terrorism is actually used to close down the democratic space. So it's actually being used not against terrorists, but actually against people who are speaking out. And that's what you've seen. You've seen it in Ethiopia, you've seen it in Cameroon. And that is really, that's problematical. And it's a sexy thing to say that someone is a terrorist. But when is a journalist a terrorist? Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. You wrote a letter to the Cameroonian president on this, urging him to free Ahmed Abba. Have you had any response?
Absolutely nothing. No response from President Biya, but we have been in communication with the communications minister. And in fact, the Committee to Protect Journalists was supposed to be in Cameroon 2 weeks ago, because it's not only Ahmed Abba who's in jail. Ahmed has been there for over 635 days, I think, but just more recently, 7 other journalists have been arrested in Cameroon, and they face terrorism charges as well. simply for being journalists, simply for doing their jobs. So we as the the Committee to Protect Journalists and the African Editors Forum, obviously this is of huge concern, and we need to raise the profile of what is going on and that people actually care.
The point really, Eben, is that you know, the fight against terrorism is one that will be supported by every nation.
Yeah.
But journalists cannot be expected to do the work of law enforcement agencies.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, Ahmed Abba is one reporter, but the state has got at its disposal resources that should enable them to resolve the Boko Haram issue in the north of Cameroon.
Yeah, it becomes convenient in a way, I suppose, to settle scores and to get rid of dissenting voices. But in that vein, tell us about the situation in Cameroon with regards to the freedom of speech that we so covet, and also if Ahmed Abba is sentenced to death today, what will you do?
Well, the best that we can do is to try and follow this law, even though we are strongly opposed to the fact that a civilian is being tried in a military court. You know, I mean, the point, Eben, is that we are not saying that journalists are above the law.
Yeah.
But it's against international treaties and laws to try a civilian in a court of law. Sorry, in a military court, you know. But it also speaks to the general problem that exists in Cameroon, where the media is under repression, you know. The 7 journalists that have been detained simply for doing their work, nothing else. You know, Ahmed Abba, all they are trying to do is to squeeze him until he reveals his sources.
Yeah.
You know, and as I said before, the state has got intelligence and other capabilities to be able to do what that we are supposed to do, and leave Ahmed and other journalists to do their service to the Cameroonian nation in the best way they can.
Yeah, but if I can just explain how ridiculous this actually is. I mean, Ahmed Abba is a journalist. He gets a call from someone purporting to be a member of Boko Haram. That Boko Haram member then criticizes him for his journalism and says that it's not true that Boko Haram may have killed 200 people in northern Cameroon. So he's actually on the receiving end of Boko Haram saying, listen, you're not reporting correctly. Yeah. On that basis, the government then arrests him and then says he's got contact with so-called terrorists. And that is the irony of all of this. And that they have held him for 3 months without anyone being able to see him, that they've continued to hold him and kept on postponing the trial time and time again while they waited to manufacture witnesses against him, which they couldn't do. In fact, no one actually came and testified against him. What they used was his cell phone and his laptop, which they had checked to see what he had been doing and what websites had he been looking at. Come on, that is not a terrorist.
Answering your question about what is it that we can do, you know, these lawyers are looking at whether there is an appeal option, given that he's not in the civilian court. And the best we can really do is to lobby the powers that be on the continent. Yeah. So we are raising awareness and working with everybody that we can work with, NGOs, but we're also embarking on a serious diplomacy campaign to talk to heads of states who we think should be able to get to their brother leader, Biya, and get him to get Ahmed to be released. Yeah. And to repeal from the statute books in Cameroon all laws that are inimical to media freedom.
In conclusion, is there a lack of understanding of the work that journalists do or are expected to do, or is this just conveniently overlooked?
A lack of understanding by whom?
In general on the continent, when we talk in this case in particular, it almost looks like there's a lack of understanding of what work a journalist is supposed to do and how you're supposed to look after your sources and so forth, for instance.
Well, I think that there is an understanding that that's not going to stop a government who wants to repress its citizens. And the first port of call will be information. And the journalists are those who are putting the information out there. So yes, they will be stopped. And I don't believe that this is a government that is ignorant of a journalist's laws. This is a government who believes in persecuting its people.
Well, there we have to leave it. Thank you very much for coming in today and talking about this important story today. Here, of course, is D-Day for Ahmed Taba in Cameroon. Angela Quintal from the Africa Programme with the Committee to Protect Journalists, and then Jovel Rantal from the African Editors Forum. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Evan.
Right, we're going to take a short break now. When we come back, Kendall Mahamate will be giving you a complete sports update. Of course, Wade van Niekerk provided all the highlights at the National Champs this weekend. So, don't miss that.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jali. What has been happening on the digital front?
To win the CAF Championship was a huge thing, and perhaps we ought to have celebrated him even more.
Absolutely.
73% of our schools, regardless whether they're in the township or they're in urban areas, if you go to those schools, you are guaranteed a matric pass.
It is the one thing that we haven't done well as a country. We have thrown money at it. I mean, if you ask for figures, you'll be told we're spending well in education.
90 billion.
But the performance of the system has not been good enough.
Welcome back. My name is Kendall Mahamate, and what a treat we had over the weekend. Couldn't even decide what to bring to you as first up. But you know what? The luck of the draw has got it that Wade van Niekerk was the highlight of Day 2 of the South African Senior Championships in Potchefstroom in the Northwest. He was first in the highly anticipated 200 meters men's final, running ahead of Akani Simbini in a time of 19.90 seconds. That's just 300ths of a second lower than Anna Sojobodo's record set in 2015.
And in trying to attempt a double at the World Championships this
It was always going to be a tough battle. The field featured, amongst others, Clarence Munyai, Gift Lotlela and Akani Simbini. Van Niekerk was quick off the blocks as he took the lead from the start.
And it's Wade van Niekerk out. Look at van Niekerk go. Akani Simbini will be chasing him. Van Niekerk in 7, Simbini in 4. They're running very well. So is Gift Lotlela. Gift Lotlela's coming through. Wade van Niekerk running away with this one. Van Niekerk going. Simbini chasing.
The 24-year-old could have set a new South African record if he had not slowed down in the final 10 meters. He did, however, run a sub-20, the result proving that he is indeed capable of a 200 and 400 double at the World Champs in London later in the year.
I remember Clarence always teasing me that he has the quickest bend, so I had to prove him wrong today. And obviously Akani's been looking so great, and I think all of them just helped me put out a good show today for the guys in Potch.
Earlier in the day, Luvo Mayonga broke the South African long jump record by 30 centimeters. He retired after his first jump. It was enough to see him ahead of Rushal Samai and Zak Visser, who were second and third respectively. The Olympic silver medalist has set his sights on a 9-meter jump in 2017. His performances have been impressive. Should he be consistent, he will definitely be a favorite at the World Champs.
I want to say, South Africa, thank you very much for the support and filling up the porch. And looking forward to support me all the way to the World Champs. I promise you guys I'll bring something great from the World Champs.
Look at this. Semenya moving away now. Caster Semenya going to defend her 400-meter title.
Caster Semenya defended her 400 meters title. She clocked 51.61 seconds. Semenya powered her way to the finish line with her trademark sprint from the 200 meters bend. She was at it again in the 800 meters. The record holder displayed her class as she led from start to finish. She completed a double with the 800 meters as she crossed the line in 2 minutes, 01.04 seconds. Semenya was not only pleased with winning, she was also impressed with the challenge she received from her fellow athletes in both races.
all the time you run alone in front. So, but if someone is coming, you know, pushing a little bit, it shows that we have progress, we're improving. So we have a great, you know, future champions. We just have to keep on grooming them.
It was a highly contested men's 800 meters final. The group kept together until the final 60 meters when the breakaway took place. Reinhard van Rensburg was first in 1 minute 46.57 seconds. Lebantube, SABC News.
And just the day before, the man credited with coming up with extremely popular #FillerPotch, Akani Simbini, reminded the world just who the fastest man in the 100 meters in South Africa is. Beating off stiff challenges from Wade van Niekerk himself and training partner and Duck's teammate Thando Roto, Akani regained his crown with his 12th sub-10 race, winning in a time of 9.95 seconds. Let's have a look.
Set. They're away together. Another great start by Akani Simbine. Wade van Niekerk's left behind. Thando Roto is running well. It's Simbine and Roto at the moment. Here comes van Niekerk. It's Akani Simbine taking it. 9.96 for Akani Simbine. It looks like Thando Roto did enough to hold off van Niekerk. Van Niekerk was coming through so fast. The favourite takes it, and the South African champion, Henrico Brankes, is run out of the medals.
Now we'll be bringing you all of the details of what happened in the English Premiership League as well as in the FA Cup. But before that, that's all in the next hour. Lionel Messi reached yet another milestone in his extraordinary career as he netted his 500th goal for Barcelona against Real Madrid in El Clasico on Sunday. His 500th goal was his second of the night, and it came in injury time, ensuring a Barcelona victory.
Marcelo. Ter Stegen stays. It's Ramos, it's the post. Scrambled over the line. It's an unlikely hero. Casemiro. Lionel Messi. Busquets. Rakitic. Leaves it for Messi. Messi full steam ahead. Brilliant, brilliant. Lionel Messi. Hasn't scored in 6 Clásicos, but he's back to haunt Real Madrid. Lionel Messi. Rakitic. Teases Real Madrid, tries to find the gap. Rakitic!
Oh, what a goal.
Stunning goal! Patience pays off! And you can see what it means to Luis Enrique. Marcelo. Hits with hope. Brilliant run! Tremendous goal! It is James Rodriguez, who does write his name in the history books. This is where the extra man is paying off for Barcelona. One final roll of the dice. Can they hit the jackpot? Gomez, Jordi Alba, Lionel Messi!
Oh my goodness!
Lionel Messi does it again. He's superhuman. Oh, Lionel Messi has just exploded La Liga into life. Another chapter in the incredible story of this little man.
Oh my goodness.
So I'll have you know that Barcelona now top Real Madrid in the log standings in La Liga. And it's not goal difference that makes a difference in La Liga. It's the head-to-head. And that's why Barcelona are top of that league. That's why we leave it for now. We'll be back in the next hour with more news, more analysis, more sporting highlights and news. But for now, it is up to Philip Hawkins to bring us the weather forecast.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, let's take a look at what's happening in the weather for today. We start off by taking a look at some rainfall in South Africa's northeast because it's been a little bit of a gloomy start to the day. At the moment, we're starting to see some areas just improving slightly, such as southern regions of Gauteng there. We have seen some isolated to scattered showers already forecast for the area, and those should burn off quickly towards the southeastern coastline and the eastern coastline of South Africa. We're also seeing some rainfall for today, up to a 60% chance of showers, and that is likely to continue into the early hours of tomorrow morning as well. Of course, not all the way throughout the day, but similar conditions present themselves into Zimbabwe, into Zambia, through Angola into DRC as well. So we start to see some rainfall really developing in a strong band through that region there. By tomorrow, we see it intensifying around Rwanda and the surrounding areas, around the northeastern parts of Zambia as well. And that's extending towards the eastern coastlines there, around Mozambique's northern regions and down towards South Africa's eastern coast again. But you'll notice by tomorrow, we start to see this high pressure system coming into South Africa's weather that's cleared up most of South Africa's central interior, most of the eastern regions as well. And what we're left with is just isolated showers along the eastern coastline and parts of the eastern escarpment as well. Let's take a look, though, at what's happening in a bit more detail here. Cape Town's at 30 degrees Celsius. What a beautiful day it is there indeed. But we do expect a 40-kilometre-per-hour wind there. So a bit of a gusty one in Cape Town. But, well, this is where we start getting into the low temperatures. PE, 22 degrees Celsius. Durban peaks at about 19 and Pretoria 21. So it really is not particularly warm at all in the eastern parts of South Africa for today. Made worse, of course, by wind chill factor, by cloud cover and by rainfall in some areas too. Gaborone peaks at 22 degrees, so not particularly warm there either. Maputo, though, seems to have avoided the cold spell. 30 degrees Celsius, and again, a beautiful day forecast for the area. As we said, some showers coming in towards Zimbabwe, so Harare and Bulawayo are not particularly warm, and temperatures not very high there at all. Temperatures of 23 forecast for Antananarivo, but warm temperatures continue in Morone, in Victoria, and in Port Louis, of course, a 30 degrees Celsius high forecast for Port Louis for today. Mauritius expecting a beautiful one. Now, moving into Central Africa, we start to see some fairly warm temperatures towards Bangui at 31 degrees Celsius, but a little bit more mild as we move towards the eastern interior around Kampala, around Nairobi. 24-degree highs for both of these areas. Dar es Salaam peaks at 28 degrees, and moving north, of course, we do start to see some warmer temperatures coming in. Although, take a look at the rainfall map for today. We do also start to see some rainy conditions moving in towards that Central African region, moving north as well in towards parts of Ethiopia and surrounding areas, and even a little bit of rainfall forecast for Morocco for today. So that's what we can expect in terms of our weather. That's where we're going to leave it, and stay tuned with SABC News.
I'm Alicia Jali, joining us live from our Johannesburg studios. A quick look now at your current news leaders. Parliament's Communications Committee has decided on 5 names to sit on the SABC's interim board. And the Constitutional Court has directed Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini and her department to account for their handling of the social grants contract.
And in tennis, Serena Williams has withdrawn from the BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells and the Miami Open due to a left knee injury.
We're expecting it to move just in the towards the southern parts of the country, not so much coming towards southern Africa, not even touching the Mozambique channel. It's just going to move back towards the Indian Ocean.
And all that, I guess that's the norm internationally.
Yeah.
But how do we know that you, Richard Ndluli, are not abusing the funds of the state? You are counted amongst the president's men. Are you?
That is rubbish.
Also the matter of General Boysen in KZN. He's not speaking very well of you.
No, that one is talking rubbish.
You are perceived to be very powerful, General, and you know, people who don't agree with you seem to pay the price. What is happening with the Oparamribe case?
No, I'm surprised because, as I've said, I'm a person of people.
A top 5 rated horse racing event in the world, fashion is a highlight for those in attendance. All decked out in blue and white, the Lomorians Queen Plate is the premier event that kicked off everyone's social calendar.
That it was all part of my master plan to cast John Legend, but deprive him of his normal instrument and give that one to Ryan.
The House of Truth is not just a name. It is a religion. It is a lifestyle. It is a conviction that drives us.
What really excites me is how people have kept it very simple and also played with the theme, and how each person has interpreted it in their own way.
To stay updated with all the current entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
campaign that is as a result of a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation grant to Good Business in Saatchi, South Africa. We've developed this campaign specifically to encourage the prevention of the bacterium. And this is aimed at people around anybody who coughs, for them to tell the person who coughs, hey Bowena, use your elbow. Motivation was really coming from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who are involved in a number of projects in South Africa. And one of the biggest challenges, as previously been said, is TB in South Africa. And the motivation is to affect behavior change, particularly with people who cough and who may be carrying the bacterium. So encouraging people to use the elbow clearly would reduce the spread of that airborne bacterium. Because the bacteria can live for 24 hours plus, you know, when you cough in your hands, you invariably touch hard surfaces or other people's hands, and thereby spreading the bacteria. When you use your elbow, though, it significantly reduces that risk, because most of the bacterium that you coughed out stays on your elbow or on your sleeve. It's such a light-hearted, easy way to get people to change their behavior, and therefore we believe it would be successful.
When you have a cough, or if you have chest pains, think about your friends, think about your friends. When you feel a fever, or if you sweat at night, look out for the signs, look out for the signs. I go when I hate, use your elbow when you cough. I go when I hate, use your elbow when you cough. Hey, hey, Nina, hey, use your elbow when you cough. Hey, hey, Nina, hey, use your elbow when you cough.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time. It's the final hour here in the newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin.
And I'm Kendall Makamati.
Now, we'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Now, today we're talking about the church and money, Kendall. It's a big question.
It's a big question, especially on a Monday morning. Lots been happening in that field, and that's why we're asking you at home, what are your views on money and the church?
I'd like to get your thoughts on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. Let's see what you are tweeting us. This one from Lucky says, our attitude towards money is the problem, not the money itself. Freely you have received, freely you must give. Religious freedom, he says.
Mujale Fakale says, money belongs to the devil. We can't avoid it essentially, but too much of it guides to evil. Church is entitled to tithe, is what Mujalefa believes.
This one from Susan says, yes, money is needed to run the church, to pay the electricity, look after the poor, pay the pastors for his services, and not buy blessings.
Bengai Benura says, religion is now a way to make a quick buck, especially charismatic churches that are sprouting like mushrooms.
And this one from Frederick says, money can be needed, but these days it's just business and an easy way to get rich. So this must stop. Now, these are some of your comments. You can keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But we're also conducting a poll today, Kendall, also relating to the church.
100%. And our poll is really about, mostly in line with what Pastor Tim Omotosho has been accused of. And we're wanting to find out from you, what are your thoughts? Should all churches be regulated now after everything we've heard about pastors making people drink petrol, eat grass, eat snakes, and what Omotosho has been doing? 276
votes in. 78% of you are saying yes, they should be regulated, and 22% are saying no. And those must be some of the pastors that's saying no there.
We're hoping that we're also getting tweets from our viewers on that particular topic, and see what your thoughts are on whether churches should be regulated now. or not.
Let's take a look at what you have to say. This one coming from Katlejo that says, regulate churches, they are too much now and people are desperate for miracles and vulnerable. They can do whatever it takes to live a good life.
Lechasa Batamolo says, let the fake churches be closed, let the fake and rapist pastors be arrested and rot in jail. Rikwile Kabo.
This one from Frederick says, we no longer have churches but business pastors. This card machines used the churches must be banned because it is not 10%, says Frederick.
Like Himalachi weighs in on this one, saying no need to regulate, arrest the vicious wolves, in brackets criminal. Matthew 7 verse 15. SABC News Team Omoto Show.
This one from Lucky continues. Why South Africa and all the countries? There are so many African countries in serious need of urgent deliverance. South Africa is the last one. Well, these are some of your comments. Please keep them coming and we'll read them as we continue. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. Government officials are visiting two schools, Malenga Secondary and Rafano Primary in Bronkhorstspruit this morning after the crash. The police ministry says former Hawks boss Benning and Tlameza's reporting for work today is merely an operational matter. And Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are set to face each other in the May 7th runoff to become the French president. Is it going to be centrist or is it going to be leftist? That's the big question. That's what we got for you. But right now, before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Now, Elvis, thank you very much. You know, on the topic of the day, I want to tell you this much, that really it's the love of money that is the root of all evil. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
They're away together. Another great start by Akani Simbine. Wait, Fanikak's left behind. Thunder Roto's running well. It's Simbine and Roto at the moment. Here comes Fanikak. It's Akani Simbine taking it.
Sprint Kings Akani Simbine and Wait Fanikak hold true to the hype as the crowds fill up watch to witness South Africa's finest in action.
Fanikak going. Simbine chasing. Leuklela. Wait, Fanikak 19.90 seconds.
The Pirates looking to create the opportunity of their own. It was Ngosi who found Rahale, and indeed, is that the winner by Gabuza?
As SuperSport United dumped Kaizer Chiefs after the Nedbank Cup, Orlando Pirates secured their passage to the semi-finals with a 2-1 victory over Bloom Celtic. And in La Liga, Lionel Messi puts Real Madrid to the sword with his 500th goal for Barcelona, blowing the league title race wide open.
Lionel Messi!
Oh my goodness!
Lionel Messi does it again. He's superhuman. Oh, Lionel Messi has just exploded La Liga into life. Another chapter in the incredible story of this little man.
Manchester United showed depth of character as they continue their fight for a top four finish with a controlled 2-0 victory over Burnley.
Wayne Rooney for Manchester United.
All this and more we've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin, about 11:35 or so. For now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Our top story this morning, government officials are visiting two schools, Malenga Secondary and Rafano Primary in Bronkhorstspruit this morning. 18 learners, 4 from Malenga Secondary and 14 from Rafano Primary, as well as 2 adults, lost their lives when a minibus taxi collided with a truck on Friday. Only one body has been identified thus far.
A heartbroken mother and father, having lost 2 children, Siyabonga and Tembelane Maziba, were in grade 1 and 6 respectively. The family grateful for the support it's receiving.
I appreciate what the government is doing for me since I don't have anything.
Other grief-stricken parents were comforted by government officials. 14 pupils were from Rafano Primary and 4 from Mhlengi Secondary School. The families are kept abreast of developments and plans. Funeral arrangements will be made once DNA tests are finalized in 5 days. Injured pupils will also be supported.
Provide support to families, both families of the deceased and those that are injured. We've put counsellors to ensure that there is support. We've also placed counsellors to come to school.
Cold comfort to families. The road is also receiving attention.
The issue of the road is in the pipeline of the Mpumalanga government, which is going to start constructing that particular route by the beginning of November 2018. But the provincial government is taking care of that particular route.
Fellow school pupils will receive counseling from Monday.
Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says allegations of state capture must be put to rest to safeguard the unity and the cohesion of the African National Congress. Ramaphosa was delivering a Chris Hani Memorial Lecture in Uitenhage in the Eastern Cape yesterday. He added his support for a judicial commission of inquiry into the matter.
The Deputy President did not mince his words. He said the recent cabinet reshuffle had heightened tensions within the ANC.
The manner and the form recently in which the cabinet was reshuffled a few weeks ago heightened those tensions within the movement. Whether we want to dismiss it or not, the reality is that triggered the heightening of those tensions.
He said the party was in deep crisis and rot had set in. The allegations of state capture needed to be addressed as a matter of urgency.
The ANC, therefore, should support the establishment of an effective, credible mechanism to investigate these claims. And a judicial commission of inquiry has been suggested. I support, or there should be a judicial commission of inquiry.
Addressing a home crowd, Jonas praised the SACP for speaking out against those who defied democracy. He said the ANC used to be led by visionaries. He said the ANC had learned nothing from the loss of a number of metros in the August poll.
If we continue to ignore these signs, we must actually bear in mind that there will be a danger that our hard-won democracy will become something that we talk about, lost in our lifetime.
It was not all bad news. Ramaphosa said the upcoming ANC's 54th elective conference in December was the time for change. Janine Lee, SABC News, Uitenhage.
Now, South Africa and the People's Republic of China will launch the high-level people-to-people exchange mechanism from today up until the 26th of April 2017. The South African delegation will be led by the Minister of Art and Culture, Mr. Nathi Mthethwa. The Chinese delegation will be led by the Vice Premier and the State of Council of China, Ms. Liu Yangdong. The purpose of the exchange mechanism is to deepen mutual understanding between the people of South Africa and China, and to exchange and use cooperation in areas of, among others, culture, education, communications, health, science and technology, sports, tourism, women affairs and youth. For the latest on this, let's go there live to the occasion.
Part of creating a better world for all. Central to our efforts in the field of international relations and diplomacy is a notion of people-to-people relations with partner countries jointly engaging each other and deepening our understanding of ourselves. The civil society is central to the realization of this goal. The AU Agenda 2063, through the dictates of this agenda, we aspire a shared prosperity and well-being for unity and integration. We desire a continent of free citizens and expanded horizons where the full potential of women, youth, boys, and girls are realized. This mechanism is coming in handy for us to respond to those goals. Our government is moving from the point that creative industries, cultural and creative industries, have a powerful role to play in nation building and social cohesion. It also has a great potential to contribute in our national economy. This belief is rooted in the understanding that culture, which is going to form one of the major parts of today, bears the imprint of humanity. Arts, culture, and heritage grants us an opportunity to learn about each other's worldview and all what humankind has to offer in this world. Today, the world faces unprecedented challenges high and rising levels of youth unemployment and disenfranchisement, a deep economic recession, growing evidence of the impact of climate change, and a wave of migration across Europe, not seen since the World War II, as people flee terrible conflict. Now more than ever before, we must invest in and support arts, culture, and heritage as a way for people to retain a sense of self, as a way to build prosperity. This launch came few days before our Freedom Day that we will be celebrating on the 27th of April this year, coinciding with the centenary of Oliver Reginald Tambo, the ANC's leader, a struggle icon, and a statesman who, whilst in exile, visited the People's Republic of China in order to establish ties with China. I make mention of this colossus hero because he was a science teacher. He was a science teacher turned lawyer. He could have easily become a scientist or medical doctor if it wasn't for laws that were segregating. It is pacifying that through his struggles and sacrifice, we are having this launch today, and our children, black and white, boys and girls, will benefit out of this engagement. Her Excellency, let me conclude by expressing our gratitude for agreements and MOUs that we will be signing today. All 6 are germane, and we are looking forward to implement them. Thank you for your attention.
No, I'll do it.
Your Excellency, for those words, but also to say, as we are sitting here today, we are also occupying OR Tambo Chamber. That's the place of
the people-to-people exchange mechanism being launched today, and will go for 2 days. We'll keep you updated on the progress there. Meanwhile, the health system is collapsing in KwaZulu-Natal. Hospitals are short-staffed and filled with broken equipment, and frustrated staff battle to treat patients there. KwaZulu-Natal South African Medical Association SAMA Coastal Branch Chairperson says that the situation is getting worse every day as more and more patients cannot be treated on time. For more on the story, in our Durban studios, we are joined by Dr. Mwise Mzokwa from the South African Medical Association Coastal Branch Chairperson. A very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, sir, and good morning to the viewers. I'm Dr. Mzukwa.
Thank you, Doctor. How bad is the situation in KwaZulu-Natal? Because you said there's only one oncologist and urologist in the entire Durban and South Coast area.
Yes, the situation is quite bad. As you know, we've got a shortage of medical staff, that is doctors, a shortage of nurses. We've got a failure to procure equipment for the last three years or so. And also the failure of hospital services, your supply chain management, your repairs and services to equipment. And also the department has introduced a new policy on overtime, which has angered many of our doctors. Now, so the situation is quite bad on the ground. As you know that there's a Durban complex and the other hospitals in the periphery that refer patients to us in Durban. We currently have a problem at Ngwelezane. The system there, the surgical department does not have a surgical cover on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And those patients must be referred to King Edward Hospital and also Eddington Hospital, as well as got problem. I'm just highlighting, as you know, we've got oncology, we've got urology. If our doctors are sending patients for urology services, they are now going to consult, not a procedure, but to consult only from August this year.
What is at the heart of these problems?
As you may have heard, as from 2015, the department embarked on a cost-cutting measure where they had decided that they are not going to, they are going to freeze posts, they are not going to fund new posts, and also they are not going to train registrars. They had promised that if they are not training registrars, they were going to give us medical officers. Registrars are those doctors who are training to be specialists, and medical officers are doctors who have completed their community service, and they are in between the specialist and the community service doctor. So that's where the problem is, and as it is now, there's a dire shortage. And also we want to dispel this myth that doctors are leaving the public sector because they are greedy or they want to go to the private sector. I have doctors who have closed their private practices and went back to the public sector because they have a heart to serve in those areas. For example, in Newcastle, I've got Dr. Dlamini, who is a gynecologist. Her house is in Amanzimtoti. Her practice was at Isipingo Hospital, and she closed down. She went there to take a post in government, and the government, as it is, she's very frustrated. She wants to go back to private. Even if you want to interview her, I can give that to you.
Mm-hmm.
And many of our oncologists have left because there was just no posts.
Mm-hmm. Now, doctor, how many, by the way, how many specialists are not in hospitals in Durban? And what about the rural areas, if that is a problem in the Durban area?
The rural areas, there's a huge problem, but even in the rural areas, there's a challenge, as I told you, about Dr. Dlamini, who had left from Durban, went to Newcastle to take a post there. They've been interviewing doctors. They even thought that doctors don't want to go to the rural areas. They started interviewing foreign doctors, but they were not getting appointed by the department.
Now, you penned a letter titled Collapse.
And that is not the only issue.
Yeah. Now, you penned a letter called The Collapse of the System. Tell us about it, and what are your objectives with this particular letter?
When we talk about the collapse, we are talking about patients who are waiting for services and oncology patients who are dying waiting to be served by the department. And as I was informed that some of these patients have gone on to complain to the Human Rights Commission because they've been failed by the system. And we also have in oncology the backlog in neurology, where patients are not really getting the service, as quick as they want. So that is what we're talking about, the dire situation in KZN. I know that the principals in Maritzburg are disputing that. They say there's no crisis, only because they only call a crisis life is demanding. If there's a situation like that one, then they start running around wanting to intervene. But when we say we are on the ground, our members are on the ground. That's what is happening on the ground. And people will never fool our communities because they are the consumers of the service. They know exactly what is happening in the hospitals.
Just in conclusion, doctor, we've talked about all the problems. What are some of the solutions?
Solutions is that we need employment. There must be the posts must not be frozen. They must not be frozen. Secondly, the issue of committed overtime must be attended to as soon as possible, because we will see, resignation in numbers of our specialists leaving the service because they are being threatened by this provincial government. And secondly, we want security in the workplace. I have been told recently that there's at Ntuzuma Clinic, that service is not running in the night because nurses there were attacked, because there's no proper security in the workplace. And I mean, why must we wait for somebody to die and then we run around and want to work on the issues only because somebody has died. What we are saying is the South African Medical Association, let us prevent death of healthcare workers and let us work together to find these solutions with the department.
Doctor, thank you so much for your time and joining us, and hopefully it will be sorted out. That was Dr. Mvuyise Mzukwa, you rectified me on his surname, South African Medical Association Coastal Branch Chairperson. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back. Starting a business is not always easy. Ask me. From the startup expenses to a host of regulatory policies that make the process very difficult and very tedious. And keeping your business afloat, especially in tough economic times, can also be challenging. But one multi-business owner seems to have all the tricks of the trade. Now, he specializes in financial turnarounds. He's a global investor, property investor. He bought 8 companies in the last 2 months. I'm going to check if that is true. He's with me here. We are pleased to welcome international speaker and multi-business owner Cobus Smith to share some of his secrets. A very good morning to you, Cobus, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Ian.
Mr. Smith, 8 companies in 2 months?
Yeah, it's most of them in South Africa.
I tell you.
And the opportunities are here. I just think people wait for opportunities to come knocking on their doors rather to go out and get them. And they're out there.
Even in a country where we have junk status, you have a chance to buy businesses?
Absolutely. I think people read too much into it. I emigrated from South Africa in 2008. That was amidst the global financial meltdown. And since I went, for the last 10 years, I've increased businesses, their profits by 50% per year during the financial crisis. Now, if we could do that then, why can't we do it with a junk status?
I tell you. Now, to be successful and to travel around the world and to assist these companies, you must have something that works for you. What is it? What is the magic?
Passion. I have a passion to help people. I have a passion to help families. If there's families out there who has a business and they're struggling, I would like to make it my business to help them.
Now, you talk about the 2008 financial crisis right now, and I've just spoken about it. We have junk status in the country with 2 downgrades already. We're still waiting for a third one. Now, in a low-growth economy like we have in South Africa, how can small business increase their profits and create those opportunities and possibilities that you've identified?
I think the most important thing is everybody needs to know where they're going. There must be an end goal. And currently, what I find in a lot of businesses is people don't know how to steer the ship. What they're looking for is they have an idea, I'm going to start my business, they have a passion for what they're doing. And at the end of the day, what happens is they start out and it starts going south and they don't know how to do it. If you have an end goal, you can measure where you're going on a day-to-day basis. You know exactly whether you're achieving your results. In all the businesses that I'm involved in, the turnarounds, we have measurements, we have metrics that we measure daily. And those metrics tells us whether we're on track or not. And even in this low growth, what I do is I spend a lot of time meeting people. I would say almost 70% of my time is meeting with people, and only 20 to 30% of the time is working on the businesses and in the businesses. And I can do that because of relational capital. Whenever I meet people, I make the right connections. I then connect those people up with one another and businesses with one another to actually assist each other. I think quite often what we find in the business industry is that everyone is out for themselves.
Yeah, working in silos.
Yeah, very much, yeah, working in silos, but also it's, if I can undercut you, I will do that, rather than collaborate and work together to find the best solution for not just the businesses, but also for the economy and the country in itself.
I interact with a lot of small businesses, and they always tell me that there's a lot of red tape that they have to deal with in starting a business, especially in South Africa. Do you find that that is the case?
Yes, there is red tape, but again, if you plan properly and you know exactly what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, you measure those, let's say, the red tape. You know when it's going to happen and you plan your business accordingly.
What are some of the challenges that you've identified that why South African businesses are struggling, small businesses for that matter?
I think first of all is there's a lot of ideas out there and people are looking for capital. They don't know how to start a business. They don't know where to go and look for the business. And that's the major thing, is everybody has the idea, everybody wants to be their own business. And I can tell you now that South Africans are very, very good entrepreneurs. Through all the hardship through the years, they went out and they made business. Now it's just to take that next step, is to put it down on paper, to work out what is their exit strategies, because in business that's what it's all about. Whether you want to start a business for your family, whether you want to start a business to sell it off in a couple of years, you must have that exit strategy in place. And if you've got that, then you can work backwards and measure, as I said earlier. And if you can measure, you can manage your business. But the challenge is yes, capital. A lot of people don't know where to find the capital and how to start the business.
And there's so many organizations available in South Africa where people can get the capital, but they don't know how to access it.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, you talk about the SABC. There's so many businesses, banks that would lend money. But again, people think that, yes, you know, I want to go. I think also a lot of people, and this is most probably more to the other side of it, is people are scared of BBBEE. I can't start a business because I can't do business with this one. I can't do business with that one because this brings rating. Instead of just going and trying to understand exactly what is BBBEE.
Yes.
And when they understand, then they will know what is the next step to do.
I want to go back to your mojo, 50% increase in profits in the last 14 years for every company you work with.
Yes.
What did you do differently?
First of all is I go through the financial statements and made absolutely sure that the costs are bare minimum. We do something that we call zero budgeting. Every year we go back to the budget and we start from zero. I don't go and say, I've spent $1 million this year, next year I want to spend 10% extra. We start from scratch and we renegotiate. So if the suppliers get comfortable, and that is the problem in business, people get comfortable. We go, we find one supplier, we're happy with the supplier. We never need to renegotiate the prices. What we do is we renegotiate constantly. And that keeps our profits down, or that keeps our costs down and increase our profits.
You also assist companies to invest offshore.
I do.
And how successful has that been?
Pretty successful. We've got a rate of just over 23% year on year over the last 2 years. And yeah, it's pretty successful. And there's lots of opportunities currently to invest offshore, especially with John's status over here. People who's concerned and worried about their money, they can contact me and we can look at getting their money out of the country.
Talk to me about your book, just briefly, Powered by Profits.
Yes, I've written the book Powered by Profits. It's an e-book, and in it I actually share stories. I tell people how to do business, how to run it, but I've also gone and told them stories without mentioning company names and that. I've just gone and told them stories because you would expect CEOs, business owners to know these things. And I was amazed to get into businesses and find that, no, they don't. They don't have a clue. And that's what I share with people, to tell people you're not the only one out there. There are more people like you. There's more people that want to start businesses. And that's what the book is about, is a motivation for people to really start businesses.
Know your numbers by day one or your business dies by year 2.
Very bold statement, but 50% of all businesses fail in the first 12 months, and 80% of all businesses fail within the first 5 years. And of the 2 that remains, at least one of those 2 will only have 1 employee after 5 years.
Mr. Smith, where can people get details on this?
This is on the website, www.poweredbyprofits.com. And if they want to contact, my details are on there. But if they want to contact me directly, my email address is Kobus, K-O-B-U-S, @poweredbyprofits.com.
Thank you, sir, for joining us here in studio.
Thank you very much.
And all the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
That was international speaker and multi-business owner Kobus Smith. He just bought, in the last 2 months, during the crisis here in South Africa, to junk status, 8 companies. What about you? The rise of charismatic churches, controversial behavior of pastors, church commercialization, governance structures within the church, that seem to be a cause of concern in our country. Now, to help us understand what seems like a rise in charismatic churches in South Africa, we are joined in studio by religious expert at University of Johannesburg, Professor Maria from Arp. Professor, very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
First and foremostly, talk to us about the difference between a charismatic church and mainstream churches.
Okay, so we have a variety of different churches in South Africa at the moment. We have our mainstream churches, which are churches that were started at least 200 years ago. Many of them, like the Anglican, the Methodist, the Presbyterian churches, came to South Africa as missionary churches. They tend to have a very strong focus on teaching their pastors, giving them education. Normally this is at some sort of a university. There is a depth of theology that has been around for a long time. And what quite a few people say is that these churches are quite stuffy. It takes a very long time for anything to change in these churches. Then we have, in the 1910s, the rise of African independent or African initiated churches. These are churches started by people that have a strong prophetic gift and able to heal people or to foresee the future. And these prophets began to establish their own types of churches. One of the oldest of this is the ZCC Church in Moria. These churches are led by people who have a strong prophetic gift. In other words, they can do miracles. They haven't necessarily had a lot of theological education, and they really work on being filled by the Spirit. They often have a variety of different rituals and practices that are very foreign to what we would call mainline churches. So in the ZCC, there is a ritual around drinking tea that has been blessed by holy water. And then the third sort of stream of churches that we have is, broadly speaking, charismatic, evangelical, and Pentecostal type churches. And in these churches, the power of the Holy Spirit to move all sorts of different people in the church is a key component. So particularly in Pentecostalism and in the charismatic movement, people are considered a part of the church when they can display the gifts of the Spirit, either speaking in tongues or healing people or having some sort of prophetic vision, and that allowing the Spirit to move amongst the community was a hallmark of the early developments of these churches. But what we now see in South Africa is a kind of bleeding between African independent churches and evangelical and charismatic churches. Evangelical are normally understood as churches that have a strong evangelical message, in other words, trying to proselytize people and get as many people to join the church as possible.
Is there a rise in these type of charismatic churches in South Africa, though, Doctor, especially from other parts of the continent and the world?
Yeah, very much so. So we saw the first wave of these sorts of churches in the 1980s. And we started with things like Rhema, Grace Bible Church, His People. But particularly in the last 3 years, we've seen an enormous proliferation of churches like this. Churches often with pastors from other countries like Malawi, Nigeria, Ghana, but also a lot of pastors from South Africa. And the kind of key thrust of these churches is that God will bless you. And God will bless you with healing, with a husband, and with money. And the more money you give, the more God will bless you.
What should we know about the teachings of these particular churches? We've seen some very controversial acts being performed within the church. People drinking petrol, eating grass, and even fed with rats.
So some of these churches stick very much to the Bible. And while they might have quite a conservative understanding of the Bible, what they are saying can be found in Scripture. So God does in the Old Testament say that if you obey him, he will bless you. This, of course, is countered in the New Testament by Jesus, who says, blessed are the poor. So while these churches may select certain portions of Scripture, they are still based on some type of Scripture. But there is nowhere in Scripture where it says you should eat grass, drink petrol. So we have the proliferation now of forms of Christianity where the pastors say that they are divinely inspired by the Holy Spirit. So then the question is, well, why are people doing such strange things? And we can look at this from a variety of different angles. One of the angles is the bizarre and sometimes quite grotesque nature of these churches, making people eat snakes and rats and drink petrol. And there's almost a kind of reaction against modernity and globalism and consumerism, because these people are not part of that. And on the other level, there is a kind of engagement with the grotesque, because what we see as clean and pure is not working. So my research is showing that people join these churches because they are in a place of desperation. They are not getting married, they're not getting a job, and their miracle that they are waiting for is so extreme that it makes sense to do something extreme like eat a rat in order to make this miracle happen.
Why is it that we've also seen these particular pastors in these churches have thousands of followers and they have lots of money? Are they perhaps preying on the poor?
Many people argue that. So people come to these churches because you just need one miracle or alleged miracle, and you will have 200 people and 1,000 people. And then the way it works is many of these churches actually focus much more on the power of the devil than the power of God. And so everything that's bad that's happening in your life is because the devil has a hold over your life. And you need to break the hold of the devil. And you do that through what they call strong prayers. And very often strong prayers are made stronger by the more money you give. So they'll do a rally for marriage. And the seats where people want to get married in the next 3 months, they will charge 2,000 Rand. And for people who want to get married in 6 months, it'll be 1,000 Rand. And for people who only want to get married in a year's time, they can come in and pay 500 Rand. So there are all sorts of elaborate ways in which people are paying money in order for a miracle that feels completely beyond their control to take place.
We haven't got much time, Professor, but in your informed view, is it about time that these churches should be regulated?
That's a very interesting question. I asked my students this in a course I teach on religion, politics and development in Africa. And they said yes, because then the government can tax these churches. On a level, we don't want to lose freedom of speech. We don't want to lose freedom of religion. We don't want the state to over-regulate the world that we live in. But when you see the level of abuse that happens in these churches, there seems to be a place where some kind of regulation mightn't be a bad idea. The problem with that is that these churches are so global. And if you're going to regulate them in South Africa when the rest of the network is throughout the rest of Africa, Latin America, it's going to be very difficult to get some sort of regulation happening in these global churches. They'll go underground and they'll continue to do what they're doing at the moment. I think what we need to do is get people jobs, get people a way in which they can come out of their places of desperation and poverty.
Professor, thank you so much for your time and joining us here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there you have it. It's all about churches. That was Professor Maria from ARP. She is from the University of Johannesburg, chatting to us about that.
Right, now time for the sports. A quick roundup of exactly what's been going on for the entire weekend. First up, we'll talk to you about what happens in netball, where the Gauteng Golden Fireballs recorded their first win in this season's Brutal Fruit Netball Premier League. Now, the Fireballs beat the defending champions, the Free State Crimps, by 53 goals to 34 in the opening week of the competition in Durban. Next up, we have a look at what's happening with the Nedbank Cup, where SuperSport United dumped Kaizer Chiefs out of the Nedbank Cup, and Orlando Pirates secured their passage to the semi-finals with a 2-1 victory over Bloemfontein Celtic. Now, a little earlier on, you saw flashing by a quick summary of the results. I'm hoping that we can bring it up again just so you can see exactly what happens with the rest of the results from the weekend. But barring that, we're moving on to the next story. Thank you very much. In England, Alexis Sanchez earned Arsenal an FA Cup final showdown with Chelsea and gave Arsene Wenger renewed hope of salvaging a troubled campaign as the gritty Gunners fought back to defeat Manchester City 2-1 on Sunday. And in the league, Manchester United continued their fight to finish the year in the top 4. Let's have a look.
United have 4 on 2 here. And it's whipped in here towards Anthony Martial, who scores. That is counter-attack and some. Brilliant. It's not touch from Brady. And Pogba's rolled off him, and Martial's beyond me, and Heaton came, and Rooney pounced and scored, did he? Yes, he did. Wayne Rooney for Manchester United.
Ramsey might suit City to play on the break, and Aguero's in his own half, so he's onside. Sergio Aguero in at check, pass check. Oxlade-Chamberlain. Ramsey and Giroud in the middle. Aaron Ramsey going for it, and coming round the back in wonderful style was Monreal. What an equaliser for Arsenal. Taken by Ozil, a lot of depth towards. Oh, Sanchez! Arsenal lead, they've turned it around at Wembley. And Arsenal are in the FA Cup final. It could not have meant more to Arsene Wenger.
It's going to be Willian. It's brilliant from Willian. It's only taken Chelsea 4 minutes. Eriksson again. Trippier can deliver a mean cross if used. It is Eriksson. It's helped goalwards and it's in. What a brilliant flick from Harry Kane. That is predatory finishing from a striker who is rapidly becoming one of Europe's best. Flair-minded Argentinian way. Get the better of Conte's defence. Oh, it has! What a ball, what a goal! Dele Alli is in to equalise. Over it comes. David Luiz tried to get there. Here's Eden Hazard! He found a way through! Eden Hazard finds Cesc Fabregas. Back to Hazard. Took it away from Costa. It's Matic with the ball driver! Matic takes the net off!
And of course, there'll be a whole lot of other results from Europe that you'll be looking out for. You'll catch those in other bulletins on SABC News. Now, Belarus will host the USA in the final of the Federation Cup Women's Team Tennis Tournament in November. The country advanced to the final for the first time in its history after beating Switzerland in Minsk at the weekend. The United States, meanwhile, saw off the Czech Republic in Florida.
Belarus only started playing Fed Cup in 1994 and were without the services of former world #1 Victoria Azarenka. After starting the day on 1 win each, Alexandra Sasnovich upset world #22 Tamaya Baczynski 6-2, 7-6 to give the hosts a 2-1 advantage. Arina Sabalenka then took on Swiss Victoria Golubic. Sabalenka's hard-fought 3-set win gave the home side an unassailable 3-1 lead. While Belarus was celebrating, there was heartache for the Swiss. In Florida, meanwhile, the USA were too strong for a Czech team that was missing several top players. World #24 Coco Vanderwey starred in the victory, ending the campaign without losing a match. She joined forces with Bethany Matic-Sands in the doubles and clinched a straight sets victory over Kristina Pliskova and Katerina Siniakova in front of a raucous crowd. With the win, the USA advanced to the Fed Cup final for the first time since 2010. And in Constanta, hosts Romania defeated Great Britain in a playoff match to move back into the World Group. A day earlier, Romanian captain Elina Stasi was banned from the stadium after verbally abusing British number 1 Johanna Konta and captain Anne Kjotavong. The victory ensured that Romania maintained their position among the Fed Cup elite, while Britain will return to the Euro Africa Zone 1 group. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
Now, of course, South Africa lost its tie against Lithuania 5-0 over the weekend. Better luck next time to the team. Now, on Friday, the boxing community was rocked by the news that boxing promoter and trainer Nick Durant had died. He succumbed to injuries he sustained in a motorbike accident in the Free State. Durant was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award at the South African Boxing Awards in January, was the trainer of 38 world champions and 97 South African champions in his long and illustrious career. Amongst them were Zolani Lasbon Tete, Tulani Sugarboy Malinga, Philip Timebomb Ndo, Cassius Shy Guy Baloy. Boxing trainer Colin Nathan spoke to SABC this morning.
It's rather sad that I'm here talking about an absolute icon and legend of South African boxing. When I was told the news on Friday, I'm sitting, I'm stunned. It's hard to imagine that a man who was larger than life, who really did change the face of South African boxing in the 90s, is no longer. It's crazy.
Where were you when you received the news?
Actually, I was finishing the TKO show here at SABC when I got told the news, and shocking. I mean, at first I didn't believe it. I thought it was just a nasty rumor or a bad joke. And then obviously my phone didn't stop ringing thereafter, and it was confirmed that he passed away in a bike accident.
I know when Boxing South Africa released their statement to let the rest of South Africa know about Nick Durant's passing, they actually said, you know, they had just received an application because he had reapplied to be a trainer. So although he announced his retirement less than a year ago, he wanted to actually come back and train more world champions.
Well, you know, when he retired, it left a bit of a hole, not a bit, a big hole in South African boxing. And yeah, I'm not surprised that he was going to come back. Nick was a very, very good trainer, great manager. Like I'm saying, his record speaks for itself. But, you know, when he retired from boxing, there was a big hole that could have been replaced with him coming back. And now the fact that he's passed on, that hole will always be there in the hearts of South African boxing. A larger-than-life character's gone. And Nick Durant was his own man, and he did things his way. Very controversial, very outspoken, very flamboyant, and highly, highly charismatic. You went to a press conference with Nick Durant, you knew Nick Durant was there, and you knew his fighters were ready for war. We will never see another trainer and manager like Nick Durant in this country.
May his soul rest in peace. And on that sad note, that's where we leave it with Newsroom for today. Thanks very much for having joined us. I'll be back next week. I'll be leaving you in the capable hands of Marumo Kekana from tomorrow morning. Until then, listen.
The fossil hominid sites at Sterkfontein Caves, known as Cradle of Humankind, were declared a World Heritage Site on the 2nd of December 1999. The Cradle of Humankind covers an area of over 47,000 hectares of privately owned land northwest of Johannesburg. Most of the site is on dolomite, a rock type which is slightly soluble in water. There are currently over 200 caves on the site and 13 fossil sites. We know that Australopithecus africanus were present in the cradle from about 2 to 4 million years ago. It is generally known that hominids are close relatives of human ancestors. After a horrific accident, major questions were asked.
So step one, I asked myself, do I really want to die? And my answer to that was, I'm not sure. And then step two was, do I want my parents to bury me? And the answer to that was no.
Learning kept his brain in full action on how the brain works.
When I was in hospital, right, as I was saying, to catch up with my peers, I started to become obsessed with memory techniques and how the brain works and how we retain information.
Touching lives is his continuous mission.
I now work for a non-profit where we deal with access issues regarding kids with disabilities and persons with disability. We're busy working on beach access.
Being wheelchair-bound did not stop fun in his life.
I party in a wheelchair, I laugh in a wheelchair, I smile in a wheelchair.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday.
President Jacob Zuma says that the country's security agencies will seek new and more effective ways to fight crime.
Crime, as you would appreciate, depends on the circumstances. This narrative that South Africans are xenophobic, we don't necessarily agree with it.
This group of Bangladeshi shop owners ooze frustration. They've lost everything.
I'm like totally destroyed. I can't see what I'll do, where I'll go.
Rescue workers are still searching for the body of a 5-year-old boy who fell into an old mine shaft near Boksburg in Ekurhuleni.
Tensions remain high, with thousands of community members refusing to clear the scene until the boy is found.
All right, we talk about a healthy lifestyle, but what is this healthy lifestyle?
What we're talking about really is you are healthy in those 3 areas of life: body, mind, and soul.
Before you embark on a weight loss journey, rather first speak to your person who has your complete clinical picture.
Ideally, your plate should look like this. Half of your plate should be fruit and vegetables. A quarter of your plate, starch. Quarter protein.
Show you some of the things that I really enjoy doing for that bottom pouch as well as for cardio. So you do your kicks, you kick back.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news.
Phones, cloud systems and robots have taken over a lot of what used to be done manually.
Our accounting system is actually based on the cloud.
Google nowadays can tell you where you parked your car.
And Africa's entrepreneurs are using technology to create.
With Pocket Masipala, you can basically do all the services that you would do at the municipality physically by going there, but you can now do them on a mobile app.
Join me, Spumelele Zondi, on Sundays at 9 p.m. on SABC News.
Gauteng remains the leading business and leisure tourism destination in Southern Africa. With a vibrant urban city vibe and new and exciting tourism experiences tailor-made